That's cute.
Okay, great. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the City of Kingston Planning Board meeting. Today is June 16th. It is 6 o'clock. My name is Suzanne Cahill. I'm the planning director for the City of Kingston. I just have a few quick announcements before we begin the meeting. If you do have a cell phone, I'm just going to ask that you please silence your cell phone so that it does not interfere with our meeting. I would also let people know that we are recording and we are live streaming, so please be aware of that. If you do have an emergency, if we have an emergency, we ask you to use the stairs and not the elevator. If you need assistance, we'll help you out. And lastly, if you have conversations that you are having outside of those with the planning board, we ask that you take them outside of the room. The council chambers are available, or there is another conference room on the other side of the chambers as well. Bathrooms are also located through the chambers. Men's would be to the left and women's to the right. So with that, I'm going to turn the meeting over to Chairman Platt to introduce the board members and others present and start the meeting.
Okay, thank you, Suzanne. Welcome, everybody. Again, my name is Wayne Platt. We have the members Charles Palaco, Robert Jacobson, Matt Gillis, Vince Archer, Sage Newkirk, and Andrew Harris. You've already met Suzanne Cahill. She's our planning director. Kyla D-Day is the assistant planner. We have Matthew Jankowski, who is the assistant corporation counsel for the city of Kingston. And Alderwoman Sarah Pasty, who's the common council liaison to the planning board. Item number 1 on the agenda, hi there, is the adoption of the May 19th, 2025 planning board meeting minutes. Everybody's had an opportunity to take a look at them. Any additions, deletions? Seeing none. This time I'll make a motion that we approve them. Do I have a second? Second by Chuck Palaco. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried. Okay, moving into public hearings. Item number 2 is number 10 and 20 Furnace Street. It's the lot line deletion of the lands of Robert E. Gallagher II, secret determination. Section block and lot is 56.108-4-14 and 15. It's in transect zone T4N, Ward 4. Robert E. Gallagher is the applicant owner. Is there anybody besides Mr. Gallagher wishing to speak on item number 2? Okay.
Hey, come on up.
We got a spot for you right down at the end.
Thank you.
We're from Colony Liquor people, aren't we?
Yes.
Yeah, Wayne Platt.
Wow.
Yeah.
I came up the other side, I could hear people talking, I went back.
Good seeing you.
Good seeing you.
All right, sir. We need to delete lot lines between 2 parcels and put everything into one, right? Is that what you're looking to do?
Yes.
Okay, we're gonna have a picture come up behind you here. Are you looking for, so I just basically said what you're gonna do. You have any plans, as a result of
The
it?
house ain't worth fixing for it to live in, so I use it for storage.
Okay,
So by me, I own the house next to it, I'm gonna make it one big lot. That property goes behind 10 Furnace Street,
okay.
which 10 Furnace Street doesn't have any property, which is that fenced in yard.
So you rent out one of the homes.
It's just a 10 Furnace Street. Yeah.
Okay. And then the other house is for you use it for storage for your private business
Like
or
jukeboxes,
you collect jukeboxes?
arcade machines.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
So you're currently dealing with, building department. Is there some outstanding violations? I understand you're taking care of them. right?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay,
I just went to Perry's today.
okay,
They got that rotator. The wheels are seated up on the machine. But years ago, back when Murphy worked in the The building department, he approved me
Okay.
to build that 10-foot corral over there.
All right.
And I dumped the gravel in there. I had that donor come in there, dumped all the gravel, and then it's been, and then just about maybe 6 years ago, he said I had to lower the walls to 6 feet. And I was working at Cisco at the time and working 14 hours a day, I had time to come to the meeting, and I just,
Okay. So you're working with them to
the
take,
property looks nice and clean over there. And then somebody stored stuff over there and he made a mess out of the place a couple of years.
okay,
Terrible. And he'd be the nicest. All you gotta do is mow the grass, I didn't charge him nothing, and make sure the sidewalks are clean.
and you've probably already been told this, but, the size of all those lots, you could have made a third one and it would have been legal. I don't know if that's,
Yeah, it could always be changed again, I guess. Like, for now,
yeah, so I didn't know if you had known that, but,
I can make 3 lots out of it. But for now, just trying to clean the place up. I just retired,
okay,
then I get time on my hands.
good for you.
But the property's nice and clean over there.
Okay. With any approval, Sue, do we make building department issues part of conditions or is that?
Yeah.
That's okay, fine. Any questions from the board? Okay. Yeah,
She doesn't know about curb cuts, so he's got 2 separate garages.
Yeah, they are pre-existing.
And there's 2 separate driveways, so.
Okay.
do we help to remove a driveway? What do we do? Remember, the curb cuts we can keep there, right? But what is?
I mean, technically, each property is only permitted one curb cut for access.
So you have 2 different buildings and.
Right.
Access. You take the curb and driveway, you can't get to that house.
I mean, you can just say they were grandfathered, and then, and we'll make a note of that.
Boy. I told her I was out working in the yard shoveling. And I told her, call me at 5:15 so I can get ready. And I said, man, if I can show you.
Did you run over here?
It was 5:45.
All right.
I shaved quick and came, it's almost sweaty. It was
Right. I was gonna offer you a towel, but.
I'm running up these steps over here. I said, there's nothing going on here. And then they go back down. I said, am I in the right building?
All right. All right, so under seeker, this is a type 2 action, so no further review of the board is required. At this time, I will make a motion that we approve item number 10, and Sue's got some,
Checking here. Okay, we did get the result. Okay, all right.
with the conditions she's gonna outline.
Okay, so really, if you're approving this with board policy 6, will have to be placed on the final plan and signed. You'll finalize all the cleanup of the building safety department prior to the signature chair. And the access curb cuts are grandfathered in. We will need 5 paper copies and 1 Mylar. Your blocks signed by you. And 1 for the board chairman for filing, okay, for final signature and final.
Okay.
Okay, but the board chair won't sign until the building department issues a note of satisfaction that all the violations are cleared.
I think the main thing is that big rod, I guess, is over there.
Okay.
The other thing, I was pre-approved years ago for that. It's little by little, it's gonna all be done eventually, when they solve the whole thing.
What is it?
There's a minor, right, there is a minor waiver request here as well.
Oh,
Because technically the lot is just, let's see,
A little bigger?
yeah, it's slightly larger. It's 152 and 150 is the maximum width allowed under so you would be, it's a minor waiver for 2 feet. Normally that is issued by the administrative body, which is me, and if you have any comment on that.
well, Robert has already brought it up and it's a pre-existing condition, right? It's not gonna be.
Well, not for the,
Well, the width is not great. The width, combining the lots actually puts them in a situation where it's a wider lot than allowed under the code.
can you just defer that to us? Hold on, or do you have to decide that?
We have to make a decision, so do you want to comment, a recommendation on that?
Or can we just decide that? I don't want to take it away from you, but do you?
You can decide that if you want.
So why don't
I'll be
we-
happy to elevate it to the planning board.
So then why don't we just decide in that motion that we were gonna. approve
Do you want to make a motion on the waiver for the width?
Yeah.
Okay,
20 seconds.
5 seconds.
okay. And you want to do a finding, please? Based on,
Oh, the width?
yeah,
Yeah, it's in conformity with the neighborhood and there's two separate buildings that are pre-existing. The one building straddles the property line. Okay, with minimally setback, so it is what it is.
okay. So there is a motion, by Robert. And
We also have to, curb cut has to go in there.
that's in the regular, we're doing the waiver separate.
But did it get into the regular?
It's made it into the regular.
That's in the regular subdivision. So the waiver, for the property width, there's a motion by Robert, a second by Wayne. The finding is that it conforms with the neighborhood, there's pre-existing conditions, and the structure straddles the lot.
Both structures on either end.
No, they don't.
Yeah. The house on the left.
They're both gonna be on one lot.
Correct, but you can't make the lot more narrow, you'd be in one of the structures. You can't go to the left, to the right, and you can't go from the right to the left, or you'd be in one of the properties, so that's why you're waiting.
The 10 First Street has no property behind it.
That's why you're
That's
waiting.
the by the house.
The 150.
It's the width only.
Property is supposed to be-
It's the width only, so,
That is the width along Furnace Street.
right, but right now, both lots conform. They're pre-existing conforming lots.
I understand, but if you, that's the reason we're waiving is because of the existing location of the structures. They straddle the line. That's why we're approving the 152. We can't make it 150.
Technically, I think you could,
Would you need to step back?
because the one has along the side has room to theoretically give to the lot adjacent to it. So I wouldn't use that as an argument.
Currently, this lot goes like this and goes behind this.
Right.
I don't understand.
Okay.
We could leave it up to the board.
So
This is not right.
right now, this parcel comes up and goes around. So this line is to be deleted and these are to be combined.
Correct.
So theoretically, this line over here is here. There is the potential for 2 feet to be taken off of the lot and given to that.
Yeah,
So
you
to
meet the
create,
setback
to
for the
create
house.
a 150 for the remainder of the parcel. So
But the question is, if you did that, then would you meet the setback for the house off the line? Probably not.
I believe there's what is this?
I would assume 3 foot in this.
I mean, it's very
There's
close.
not that much space on the side of the house.
Yes.
That's
But
why.
I don't know that that's a valid,
Whatever.
what I'm saying is I'm
I
not.
think they just leased it. There's a stone thing, if they got in the ground, it goes with.
What's the other option?
I mean, I think the pre-existing conditions, the conforming with the neighborhood are your stronger findings. That's my point.
And you have mentioned it, so,
Right.
okay,
Yeah, we read it too, but.
Yes.
Okay,
all right.
Okay.
Motion and a second, any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carry. Okay, now we'll do the other one.
okay. So now we are doing subdivisions. Again, that's board policy 6. Finalizing the cleanup with the building safety division prior to the chairman signing them out for filing. You're agreeing to grandfather in the access curb cuts. And then we would need 5 paper and 1 Mylar, for signature, filing.
All right, I made the motion on that one. Is there a second for that? Second by Vince Archer. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carry. All right. You're out of here.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Go run down the stairs.
Thank you very much.
Good seeing you.
It all worked out today.
All right.
For no reasons.
Take care, Bob.
Thank you. Thank you. No, brother. Waco, it was just like. I went to school with him.
Well, we were
78.
All that will probably, but my public bridge.
Yeah, so, thank you.
All right.
Okay.
Okay, item number 3 is 560 Albany Avenue, special permit renewal for operation of a light manufacturing welding business, section block and lot is 48.74-1-5.200, transect zone T4N-O, seeker determination, Ward 6, Triangle Fabrication LLC is the applicant, Five Star Realty Holding LLC is the owner. Anybody besides the owner or applicant wishing to speak on item number 3? Is this just a public hearing for this one?
It is, but this is the one that has not met all the conditions of the original approval, so I'd like to just ask
You wanna-
that the board put this one off until the end and we'll vote
See if he
as if
is.
he shows.
Okay, you good with that, board? Okay. Okay, item number 4 is 380 Foxhall Avenue, special permit renewal to establish an auto-oriented eating/drinking establishment, housing a drive-through coffee business. Section block and lot is 48.302-5-10. Seeker determination, transect zone T4N-O, Ward 6, Zubal Holdings Incorporated is the applicant owner. This is a public hearing on this as well. Anybody wishing to speak on item number 4? Okay, so the reason, Sue, why this was not anything done, this is.
This is the autonomous coffee, the corner of Vauxhall and Flatbush. This is a renewal only, so it's really public hearing only for you. But just to bring you up to speed, he purchased the property before he came through the planning board review process. He did get approval to do everything. However, since that approval has taken place, he has discovered that there are environmental considerations that were not addressed prior to his purchasing. So he is trying to resolve those issues now before he makes additional investment in the property. And that's the reason for the delay. So really, it's public hearing only, and will it administratively renew we intend to renew it to allow him the time to address that.
Okay. All right, we're going to close the public hearing on item number 4.
Does the board have any comments? Okay. So that passes around the ministry.
Okay. All right, under new business, item number 6 is 73-75 Furnace Street. It's a site plan to renovate an existing building into 4 residential units. Seeker determination, section block and lot is 56.92-4-42. Transect zone is T4N-O, Ward 4. Joseph Herzig is the applicant. Lyndon Peters is the owner. We're going to be tabling this.
Right, this is the property that Mr. Peters had come before you for a boarding house use. He has now sold that. We're in the process of selling it to Mr. Herzig, who's going to be converting it to a 4-family. He does need some design professional assistance with the final plans. His drawings had some issues, but we recommended to him to engage an architect and return back to the board. So we're going to be tabling this, and he's in agreement with that. But the basis of his proposal is in your staff notes.
Okay. With that, I'm going to make a motion to table item number 6. Do I have a second? Second by Chuck Delaco. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried. All right, item number 7 is 209 Clinton Avenue, major waiver request for section 405.14 at 1.1 I, is that I 1A. A lot of stuff going on there. To allow fence height greater than 4 feet along a public right of way. Proposed 6 foot for YWCA playground area expansion. Section block and lot is 56.91-3-32, Transect Zone T5N, Ward 4, seeker determination, YWCA is the applicant owner. Anybody from the Y, anyway, you wanted to come up with? It's like picking and telling the truth, right? Hi there.
Hi,
Can you state your name for the record, please?
sure, Athena Fliakos,
Okay, welcome.
thank you.
Okay, so we got some illustrate behind you there. Why don't you tell us what your plans are, please?
So the plan is to extend the existing playground towards Clinton Avenue by the distance you see here, and then also to ensure that the fence height is appropriate for early childhood, but I think it's taller. We're requesting a fence taller than what the code currently permits.
Okay.
Right, so there's a couple things going on here. The playground expansion is technically a minor site plan review. So they have filed that application with us. And that process, that circulation process has already been initiated through our office with the other municipal agencies that are required to be notified of that. In reviewing it, however, we identified that the fencing along the street frontage under code is restricted to 4 foot in height. And they want to, for purposes of the safety and security of the children, they wanted to increase that height to 6 feet, which is what the current fence is at. The current fence is also vinyl, which is not allowed. So they are replacing the entire fencing, perimeter fencing around the playground with a wood stockade, which is in conformance. So it's the major waiver that they're in front of you for, and that's for the 2 foot deviation. If you notice at the corner, they've angled the fence there, and that's so that they meet that 25-foot setback, which is the corner sight distance at intersections. So they've adjusted their plans so that they comply there as well.
Good. So I'm in agreement with granting the waiver. I mean, security is an issue and from people looking in from the outside, and you don't need children being distracted by what's going on the outside either. So I'm in agreement with granting the waiver. Anybody in this board concur with that?
I just have a question. What's with the sign out front on Clinton?
Big emotions, that one. What's the,
Oh, that is a sculpture entitled The Weather by Erica Artist DeVries. And it passed a city permitting plan. It was
Temporary
it's
installation.
temporary installation.
It was on Hurley. It was on Hurley. It's been moved here. It's temporary.
Permitting process and all the shit.
Building. Yeah.
Part of the campus plan and this playground, beautiful playground that's been designed is to have a sort of community-based outdoor art space as well as, the community. The playground will become a community playground on evenings and weekends. So the sculpture there was purchased by artist Glenn Ligon as a way to promote arts in the area and access to public art.
okay. How long is the sculpture supposed to be there for? Just,
I think we're permitted for 5 years.
that's temporary. Okay, I digress. Okay, I've already expressed my feelings about why the waiver should be granted. Everybody else feel comfortable with that? Okay. Seeker? Type 2 under seeker, so no further review of the board is required.
Just one last, just a quick question. Because it's 6 foot, this is going to be a wood fence. It's going to be 6 feet. But you said it's going to be community-based, open on the weekends?
It will be. That's
So is there like a gate or something where people come in and out?
There's 2 gates actually required by OCFS regulations to egress. There's one on Maiden Lane and there's one on Clinton Avenue. So that's actually an OCFS regulation, but that will be the
Okay.
entrance and exit. For the
And what kind of lighting is good? My only question is if it's 6 feet, it's going to go down and around. So how do you see inside as to what's taking place in the playground?
We are heavily surveyed there by cameras 24
You do.
hours. Yeah.
Is there any lighting that's proposed in this area for night or
Today.
any lighting or anything?
I mean, it's gonna be open during daytime, it's not gonna be.
Yeah,
open at
it won't
night.
be open after
So it'll
dark.
be locked in.
Yeah,
And
We'll be
then-
locked, yeah.
I just, Academy Green, we've been having some issues with.
We've been having some issues, yeah. there
So
too.
I'm just concerned about 6 feet. Can you see inside? Nighttime, people sneak in. That's this whole thing.
That will be locked up tight. It's
Okay.
after dark.
After
There'll be no community players after dark at all.
So you have like maintenance during the weekend, like Saturday,
We do.
Sundays, things like that.
I mean, that plan's in place. This is the ideal, but yeah. Start with
I
the,
would just say that that's something part of, whatever their maintenance plan is.
okay.
Since there's been issues in Academy Green.
And we have a full-time facilities director on the site for the building and the grounds.
Any other questions, comments? All right, so at this time, I will make a motion that we approve major waiver for item number 7. Have a second? Second by Robert Jacobson, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate your support so much.
Okay.
Not going from there. 6 or 7.
Did I say 6?
Said 7.
It says 7 on this one. Yes. This is the one that I printed out. What was it? I didn't laugh.
6. It's just in case you're missing.
Yeah, I might be missing something. All right, that's 2, 3. But you know what? There's no 5 in there. It's on us fault. We're blaming on her. All right. All right.
All right. Let's move on.
We're moving. Okay, and the old business, right? Yeah, that's fine. I'll sign this first. Thank you. Okay, old business is item number 7, Drive amendment to planning board approval resolution to address delayed installation of boulevard traffic signal, section block and lot is 56.40-1-19.310, Transect Zone SD-MF Ward 3, seeker determination, Ulster County is the applicant, Golden Hill HDFC as nominee is the owner. That way, fellas. How are you?
I'm great.
Just putting a plan up.
Okay.
There's a draft of a resolution in each of your folders, that we will get to, and Kyla is putting up you have a copy of it in your staff notes, but Kyla's gonna put it up on the screen. After last month's discussion, the applicants did go back to, Labella Associates, and they provided this, design layout for temporary traffic signals and other, associated improvements, signage and some, line, things that would also be installed. John Schultes has reviewed this, and they essentially, agreed to this layout. He did have a couple of comments, after his review. One is to simply remove the statement that it's a preliminary for design off of the plan, before it becomes final. And then his other major concern was how the operation and maintenance of these temporary signals will be achieved on a 24/7 basis. So we forwarded those comments along to both Dennis and Will, who are here tonight. And I don't know if the board has any questions about how these will work. Dennis, I know you and I had that discussion with and Will too. So you might want to just talk through how temporary signals will work as the construction takes place, really, and then we can talk about timing later. So I'm going to turn it over to you guys.
Sure. Thanks for having us. So this is a collaboration between, Penrose working on the residential project and the county working on the permanent light project. We decided to step in and assist with, designing and implementing this temporary traffic solution until the light becomes fully operational later this year, to allow for maintenance of the building for originally scheduled because we're a little bit ahead of schedule, as I think we all discussed in detail at the last meeting. So last time we came with I would say just a much more preliminary plan, based on the vendor itself, who was going to put these in place. And since then, I think we got some feedback and it took some time to forward this to our engineering team and had the traffic engineer put together a real conceptual design, and we were able to put in front of the city engineer for his feedback. This is, still a very conceptual plan that will be finalized into construction plans that the actual vendor itself will utilize to mobilize their equipment. And I've been assured that, we will have 24/7 coverage. These signals can be monitored and adjusted remotely. If there's an issue in the middle of the night and it needs adjusting quickly, they get those notifications immediately, and I can provide some explanation of exactly how that works at the meeting if that'd be helpful. And they also have the ability to mobilize if an adjustment is needed on site. So we'll make sure those services are available in case there's ever any issue here. Did that answer your question?
It was the engineer's recommendation that it be Jory, who is, I understand, the contractor who's going to be doing the installation of the permanent traffic signal. But this is another party, a third party. It won't be he's not the county, it's not Penrose, it's the third party that is providing the equipment, the temporary signal equipment, to be in place that is going to be doing the monitoring, correct?
That is
Right, correct, yes.
You want to talk about the presumed collaboration?
Yeah, we've reached out to Jory Construction.
Yeah. Yeah, okay, well, hang on one second. Andrew.
Okay, I have to recuse myself from this one. I'm employed by the applicant.
Okay, so you need, that's it, it's a new position, so yeah, Andrew is recusing.
So, we've been in contact and discussions with Jory. They'll take some of the responsibilities to make sure that while they're on site, that they're monitoring, that the equipment's working, and any responsibilities in terms of their need to move the equipment, particularly with respect to construction activities. They would reach back to the vendor and make sure that the vendor takes that responsibility. I want to emphasize the fact that these things are monitored remotely. These are not your typical signals that you normally see out there. These can be monitored remotely, and they can actually be adjusted, and timing can be adjusted remotely as well. Also want to let you know that the signal is going to operate pretty much like the current traffic patterns work out there. In other words, the signal, since Route 32 will operate in the green all the time, in both directions, north direction and south direction, they'll operate in the green until it's tripped by a car trying to exit onto Route 32 from Golden Hill Drive, in which case the signal will then monitor the other two signals to turn to red, and then the car can exit either right or left, northbound or southbound onto Route 32. So the only difficulty here, if there is a problem, is essentially the out movement on from Golden Hill Drive, and those can be adjusted remotely. Does that help?
And one thing we also discussed today, unlike the signal that gets tripped at the transfer station a little further south on the road on 32, sometimes that gets tripped by traffic going into the transfer station, the jail property. This will not be tripped by anybody entering Golden Hill Drive. It's only the exit movement that should trip it. If that happens, then we'll do some adjusting, but that's not supposed to happen. So I want to make that clear as well.
And going back to the previous meeting, I just wanted to say again that you folks shed some light on why there's a delay in getting the equipment up. And it was because the company doing the manufacturing, that sort of delay. And again, I think last month I said, I thought it was just something you could just pull off the shelf somewhere, and that's not the case. So
Yeah, all of the submittals have been approved from through the engineering firm. We do have long lead times on the arm and the poles as we discussed at the last meeting, but the submittals have been approved. Our conversations with Joy Construction has indicated that we gave you a schedule, construction schedule. That construction schedule showed completion in early November. My understanding from talking with Joy is that has not changed.
Okay, that was on my talking point here too. So that should be in place and functioning by the end of November, you would say, right? Okay.
So a couple things that we've thought about, obviously, is how this traffic signal plays with the gate at the head of Glen Street being put back into full service. As you're aware, the gate was put in place, it was activated, it's been damaged twice. So the county has the parts to repair and restore the gate to full activity, but we've been holding off and don't want them to do that and get it damaged again until this traffic light is really working. And so what we have thought is that if the temporary traffic signals, I talked to Dennis and Will today, the temporary signals can be put in place and activated and fully functioning by mid-August, which they've said that that's possible. Then in that month between the middle of August and the middle of September, having the county and maybe Penrose do some active public outreach to the nursing home, to the immediate neighborhood and the public in general, to get them accustomed to changing their travel patterns and using the temporary signal, which will be functioning for a month. Then on September 15th, maybe activating the gate. And that will actually coincide with the plan that Penrose has to lease out units in September and October. And they were talking about 30 or 40 units per month. So that should kind of fall nicely into place. And then at the end of November, having that be the time frame for the permanent traffic signal to be fully functional, and we should be fine.
So my sense would be we have really good communication with the nursing facility. We will continue that communication to let them know. I would suggest on the other outreach, we could simply put an ad in the paper that indicates that the gate would be active and Glen Street would be closed to everything except emergency traffic on a given date.
Yeah.
And place that, say, 10 days before.
And I mean, it's safe to say that I think that all the folks on Glen Street already know this is up there, like it said, it's gonna be repaired. I mean, we're gonna put something in the paper, but
I think
everybody-
a press release would
Yeah.
probably
Yeah.
generate a news article as well. I mean, there's ways that can be.
Something too, yeah. I haven't been up there in a while, so.
Or just put one of those trailers with a sign on it, so when people go through, it's like as if the state is closed. You maybe put a barrel in the first 2 weeks, so if they hit the barrel, you know who gave.
I don't know, you can only lower the gate. You can only do so much, right? You try to, and then somebody will always find a way to so.
They were actively driving around the gate and on the grass to get through.
Yeah. So. All right.
Does the board have any other questions?
Yeah.
Okay. So as I said, there's a resolution.
So nice.
Up to whatever.
There's some-
Yeah, there.
All right, so no more questions. We're gonna go into the resolution, reading of the resolution.
We just need to do a secret first.
Oh, you gotta do this.
Let's take it.
I'm just gonna go to that section for so make sure. Sorry. So, the amendment is considered a type 2 and secret, so no further action on the board is required. Fine. Then I can do that, right? Okay. Okay. Resolution of the City of Kingston Planning Board amending the site plan approval condition regarding the installation / operation of traffic signal and operation of a gate on Glen Street for the Golden Hill Housing Project and special use permit for daycare center at Golden Hill Drive, Kingston, New York, 12401. Section block and lot is 56.40-1-19.310.
We just want to make one correction. What is the new name of the street?
Burnway,
What is it?
Burnway Drive, I believe.
Yeah. We'll make that amendment. The name of the road has been, changed after 911 took a look at it, because Golden Hill Drive, so we'll.
Can you spell that for me?
FDRN.
Fern?
Burn.
Is that what we're saying, Fern?
So
So, yeah, sorry.
Golden Hill Drive still exists. The road from Golden Hill Drive up to the complex is named Fernway.
That's right.
Fernway.
Burnway, one word drive.
Yeah.
Just thought about that.
Great. Okay, whereas Penrose NY Developer, LLC, which is the Perez Developer, is constructing 6 buildings housing 164 units of intergenerational affordable mixed income housing in a community building housing a daycare center function on land owned now by Golden Hill HDFC as nominee for Golden Hill Owner LLC. Section block and lot 56.40-1-19.310, which is the action. And whereas the City of Kingston Planning Board approved a resolution granting site plan and special use permit approvals with conditions on September 19, 2022. And whereas those conditions included an emergency gate at the head of Glen Street shall be designed in cooperation with emergency service providers and City of Kingston, be designed, purchased, and installed at the expense of the applicant and/or County of Ulster, be installed apart from the action, be in place and operational on or before 1 year from the date of this resolution, or before the issuance of a building permit, whichever comes first, unless extended by mutual consent. Traffic signal at intersection of Boulevard in parentheses State Route 32 and Golden Hill Drive, and associated signage, pavement markings, etc., shall be designed in cooperation with City of Kingston officials and include all accessory signage. Is that for pedestrian pedestrians?
Yes.
Okay. And other mechanisms of safety measures deemed appropriate. Be designed, approved, purchased, and installed at the expense of applicant and the County of Ulster. Be in place and operational on or before any issuance of a certificate of occupancy, temporary or permanent. And the applicant, referring to Penrose in original resolution, that County of Ulster will bear the cost of off-site traffic improvements. And whereas on September 18, 2023, the City of Kingston Planning Board adopted a resolution which extended the original approval for 1 year, extended the gate installation for 1 year, added a construction, logistics, and trucking plan to the approval, and carried forward all other original conditions with it. And whereas on September 16, 2024, the City of Kingston Planning Board approved an extension of the gate to be installed by the end of November 2024 and operational within 90 days. And whereas Ulster County installed a traffic gate on Glen Street and made it fully functional in accordance with the Planning Board conditions, and said gate was damaged on 2 separate occasions, rendering it presently disabled. And whereas the director of the Ulster County Planning Department submitted a letter dated April 29, 2025, which is attachment A, stating that the county and Penrose, the applicants, are requesting relief from the condition imposed in the original approval resolution dated September 19, 2022, requiring an an operational traffic signal at the intersection of Route 32 and Golden Hill Drive prior to issuance of certificates of occupancy at the site. And whereas the county has also submitted other supporting documents, which include CME sheet 16 of 18, TSP-01 dated November 5, 2024, traffic signal plan, a traffic signal schedule submitted under April 29, 2025 cover letter, revised turnover schedule for units, which was dated May 13, 2025, and the Golden Hill temporary signal sketch prepared by Labella on June 10th, 2025. And whereas the City of Kingston Planning Board has received several written comments in a petition which speak to the opposition of their request as presented in the communication, with said items being made part of the record by reference. And whereas the planning office has referred the request to the city engineer and building safety division for review and comment. And whereas the applicants have indicated the units will be available for occupancy prior to the permanent traffic signal becoming fully operational, and desire to begin allowing leasing to start mid-September 2025 at a rate of 30 to 40 units monthly. And whereas the applicants have proposed the use of temporary traffic signals and associated appurtenances be set in place in lieu of the permanent signal functioning for certificates of occupancy to be issued for any use of buildings. And whereas the board reviewed the proposal in May 2025, requesting that the city engineer be provided with a plan prepared by a traffic engineer to evaluate and determine the feasibility of design and function. And whereas the applicant engaged Labella Associates PC to prepare a plan dated June 10th, 2025, which was submitted, and the city engineer has reviewed and agreed to the design in terms of equipment placement and associated temporary pavement markings and warning signage, but has requested that there be designated entity named for 24/7 operation and maintenance. And whereas the board also discussed the operation of the Glen Street gate and the coordination of both the gate and the temporary traffic lights to ensure safety of the residents and employees, both Golden Hill Drive and Glen Street at the May 2025 meeting. Whereas the applicants have stated the temporary signals can be installed and operational by August 15, 2025. And whereas the applicant has indicated the alterations are being made for new gate features and it may be operational by September 15, 2025. And whereas this resolution is considered an amendment to the original approval of September 19, 2022, along with subsequent reviews and decisions, and carries forward all original conditions and documentation as outlined and made part thereof. Comments received and any future decisions unless specifically referenced as an amendment. Now therefore be it resolved by the City of Kingston Planning Board as follows. Section 1, Planning Board, after full consideration of the project, hereby grants the applicant's request to amend the site plan and special use permit approval as follows. A, the applicants shall be allowed to construct and will be responsible for installing and maintaining all required equipment, signage, power, markings, and any other appurtenance as or required element for the safe operation of temporary signal operation at the intersection of Route 32, which is Boulevard, and Golden Hill Drive, until such time as the city authorizes the removal. B, that the applicants shall bear the costs of off-site traffic improvements. C, the amendment is based on the plan titled, quote, Golden Hill Temporary Signal Sketch, unquote, prepared by Labella and dated June 10th, 2025. D, all comments of the city engineer as defined in the email of June 13, 2025 shall be complied with. E, the applicant and representative shall provide a name and contact information who will be responsible for the 24/7 operation and maintenance of the temporary equipment, and filing for all necessary permits with the City Department of Public Works. F, that no temporary certificate of occupancy shall be issued by the City Building Safety Division until the temporary signals in all supporting infrastructure, examples are warning signs, painted markings, etc., are in place and functioning to the satisfaction of the city engineer and DPW. The applicant and representative should engage in public outreach in August and September of 2025 to inform the immediate and surrounding neighbors and general public regarding the traffic improvements and schedule for gate to become functional. Section 2, that the planning board believes it to be in the best interest of the public to set a firm date for the completion and activation of the temporary signals by August 15, 2025, and gate to be operational by September 15, 2025, with the permanent signal to be operational by November 30th, 2025, and all temporary items replaced with permanent elements. Section 3, that this resolution amends the original approval of September 19, 2022, and all subsequent approvals, with all original conditions and those added through the review process remaining and carried forward unless otherwise modified by a decision. Section 4, approval of the board does not eliminate the need for obtaining the appropriate permits and approvals from other boards, commissions, departments, and relative agencies. Section 5, that this resolution shall take effect immediately. This time, I'll make a motion that we approve this resolution. Do I have a second? Robert Jacobson with a second. Any questions on the motion? Wayne Platt is a yes. Charles Palaco?
Yes.
Robert Jacobson? Matthew Gillis?
Yes.
Vince Archer?
Yes.
Has been approved.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very good.
It was a long one.
Very long
Thank
resignation.
you, everybody. Appreciate it.
Take care.
You love throwing words in that are like. What was it?
People just say it all the time. Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Old business still. Item number 8 is 615 Broadway and 35 Cedar Street. Lot line revision of the lands of the city of Kingston and Salvation Army. Are we going to do both 8 and 9 together? You want to read both of them for this?
Yeah,
Okay.
we can talk about it, and Natalie is online.
Okay, so at item 8, I'll continue on. Section block and lot is 56.109-3-16 and 56.109-3-42. Seeker determination, Transect Zone T5MS and T5N, Ward 4, Baxter Development Company LLC is the applicant. City of Kingston and Salvation Army are the owners. Item number 9 is 615 Broadway and 35 Cedar Street. This is a site plan and major waiver request to construct a mixed-use building with ground floor commercial and 70 residential units. It's the same section block and lot, same secret determination, transect zones are the same. Ward 4, Baxter Development Company LLC is the applicant. City of Kingston and Salvation Army are the owners. Hi, Natalie.
Hey, good evening, everyone.
Good. Can you hear okay? We're good?
Yep. Yeah, I can hear you guys great. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfect.
Perfect.
All right.
So Natalie, tell them the good news about Salvation Army.
I was like, did everybody see the letter? Yeah. So I think as we ended the last meeting, we finally received a letter from Salvation Army. I counted back. I think it was 15 months working with them to kind of get this agreement and this letter. So we got the letter signed, the letter of authorization signed, as well as an okay to proceed with the access and purchase agreement that I believe is also being reviewed by your corporation council. So all thumbs up from Salvation Army. So really exciting news for the project and being able to proceed quickly. And then I think, just for the other items, I can go over really quickly what was submitted. I think we had 6 points that we talked about at the last meeting as like outstanding items. So the regulatory agreement for the affordable units that will kind of be deeded with the property, as well as the access easement agreement for adjacent properties and the purchase of the Salvation Army land. Those 2 agreements were circulated to the board's council for review, and I believe are under review now. I don't think we have received comments back as of yet. Salvation Army authorization, we talked about that has been received and forwarded to the board. Site work estimate was also discussed. We did a first submission and then we amended that and added more information per the request of engineering and Sue. So that was submitted, I believe, reviewed by engineering. And then we had some final engineering comments. One of our detail sheets was updated, as well as some of the language in the SWIP. And so all those items were reviewed. The last item was the dedication of parkland and the recommendation from the Parks and Rec committee. So we were able to attend the last committee meeting and talk with Parks and Rec committee about the project and about the, the public-private partnership of open space that is being provided on this site. And we were seeking either a waiver of the parkland fee or a reduction in that based on, this project site has been essentially designed around retention of the Polina Liveros Deep Listening Plaza in a new edition or a new rendition, I will say. Unfortunately, the board did not have quorum at that meeting, so they were not able to vote and make a recommendation. But I believe Sue said we can discuss that with the board. The board is able to proceed without that input from the committee. So I think those were the 6 items. But I'm happy to answer any questions from Sue or the board if anybody has comments on the submission.
So, I think let's start with the payment in Little Parkland, since that was, and kind of the only other thing then would be the performance bond. Everything else has, as Natalie said, been submitted and reviewed, and the regulatory agreement and the easement agreements have been reviewed by planning staff and are under the review of Corporation Council, but I feel very comfortable with making those conditions of approval. So with the payment in lieu of parkland, as Natalie said, they did make a presentation to the Recreation Commission. That commission's recommendation back is an advisory opinion only. And this board, under the current law, has the final authority to set what the payment in lieu of parkland fee will be. I will also add to this discussion that and this board has already reviewed that there is a recommendation to amend how that recreation fee is assessed in front of the Common Council. It is slated to be the second reading and final vote, I believe, July 1st, correct? Alderwoman Cassidy, that's for the rec fee, July 1st?
The rec fee, I'm not sure.
Okay, I believe that's my understanding that it is slated for the reading and approval then. And what that would do would be it sets the fee as a specific amount that the Common Council can adjust annually when they do their annual fee schedule. And it also exempts from the payment all affordable units that are provided for in perpetuity in accordance with form-based code. That being said, if you are to act on the recreation setting the fee as it is under today's law, you would exempt your first 4 units, okay? Which would mean that with a total of 70 units being proposed, 66 units, if you assess the full $3,000, would be $198,000 recreation assessed fee under that scenario. In the staff notes, we also provided you a second opportunity to consider. It would be exempting the units which are deed restricted. And those would be 14 units. Under the current way the code is structured, 14 units would be a combination of affordable and 10% affordable and 10% workforce. So you can consider all 14 units if you choose.
That's deed restricted.
They will have to be deed restricted no matter what. And with that, those deed restrictions are in perpetuity for as long as that property remains residentially used. And they have agreed that that is the way those 14 units will be set aside. So you can exempt those 14 units if you choose. You can add the additional 4 to the exemption if you choose. You can come up with your own creative, calculation, however you choose to consider it. you can also choose an amount lower than $3,000 per unit if you want under the current, because you're still functioning under the current law, the current statute. I will say that historically, you have not done that. You've always imposed the full fee, whenever you've imposed it. So, unless the board has another option you want to discuss.
What about the public pedestrian plaza, is that like
You can get, that is what, you can consider that as part of your exemption, that they are providing a plaza area. It is open to the general public. However, there are restrictions. It will be managed and, closed at night.
It'll only be open during business hours, not.
Right, during business hours, right.
Yeah.
Right.
It would be, I guess our argument is that it would be open to the general public. You do not have to be, and there'll be public events and is the intent for the space. So it really is a true public-private partnership in that it will be, as Sue mentioned, managed for safety reasons and obviously security reasons when the businesses are not active and there's no one on site. The public space, like many parks, are closed from dark to dusk, right? Or from dawn to dusk. The space would be closed, but in general, it would be open to the public, not just residents of the building, not just patrons of the businesses, but in general. And we've been working with the Midtown Arts District to use it as a community event space as well. So for that reason, we are the applicant is requesting the consideration of the board of a reduction of the fee amount from $3,000 to $2,000, a 30% reduction or 33% reduction, which would still leave a rec fee of $104,000 as the rec fee. But if you're counting the other discounts that Sue talked about in terms of the 4 units, first floor and the affordable units.
So you're coming to that $104,000 figure by taking the 4 exempt and then the 14 off, and then multiplying that
The other way would be
52 by 2,000. Is that what you did? Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
the other option is that first option there. If we reduced it to 2,000, would be 132,000.
We just exempted the 40.
That's what he did.
Okay. All right. So Wayne, just so we're clear, so what Wayne was saying is taking the first option, removing the 4 exempt units and taking the 66 and multiplying it by 3. That's the way option that Wayne just mentioned.
Can you just remind me on past projects, we haven't really had public space other than what I remember in Kingstonian, but I don't think we ever got the part on that. Did we?
No, we did.
What was our decision on that?
That was a full exemption that you ultimately decided on. But that is slightly different. That is still public property, not private property. And it's not going to be gated off. It will be managed and maintained by the property owner, but it's not gated. So people will be able to walk through there pretty much at any time.
I tend to lean towards Wayne in the fact that we exempt the units that are the first 4 plus the deeded. I understand there's current law that's being proposed, but it's not in place. So I would be more comfortable just reducing to the 2 based on what the applicant is asking for, because there is a public-private open space.
Okay, so.
The best mix of both.
Okay, so you would be reducing the amount per unit to 2,000 based on the amenity, and just only exempting the first 4. So taking the 66 units and by 2,000 apiece. Okay.
The other question is this has to be decided tonight
Because we have to put something in the resolution.
There's some blank spots.
They want conditional approval, so it would be part of the approval.
So because that's public, there'll be public open space in there, what we're talking about. Does the this might not be a question for us here or you, but does city park and rec to go in here and do any maintenance or?
It'll be managed and maintained, which is.
That's why I say,
Okay. Just want to make that.
That the public during business hours, like now they didn't change.
That is, yes, that's part of the site plan.
Okay.
And it will be part of the, is that in the regulatory agreement?
It's the
I know
regulatory
it's to do
agreement, but the
with
transfer of the
management
property.
plan we did submit, and that management plan is part of the approval, so.
Yeah, and then also the agreement I think you haven't seen, Sue, is the transfer of the property from the city of Kingston to Baxter. And I believe it's referenced in that document as well.
So how does everybody else feel about that option for reducing from 3,000 to 2,000, exempting the first 4 units they can get? Doc, you good with that? Sage? Andrew? I think you're good.
I think we're gonna have to, we'll amend the resolution when we get to that part. Interesting.
You got the gist of that right now, Lee, what we just talked about?
I did, and I wrote it down. I understand completely, and I appreciate the board's consideration. Thank you.
Over some other big ticket, but you got it right there. I'll let you go.
Okay. 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 So you have, the next one I want to just quickly talk to you about is the, performance bond, as Natalie said. They did submit, a detailed cost estimate that was reviewed, and approved. And we, went through that with our, city engineer. And we went to find about the amount that we are recommending, we rounded it up, and it's $1,500,000 as the performance bond for the cost estimate. And that would be a bond that is submitted in a form that is satisfactory to the planning staff and corporation council, and it would have to be provided prior to any building permits being issued. The cost estimate was $1,498,000 something and change, so.
That's what's staff and engineer want.
Good, okay. And that's it, otherwise we can move into the resolutions. Natalie, do you want to just quickly just talk about the issue of the voluntary brownfield program? Because that is something new that came out from between now and last month.
Yeah, so in conversation, our engineer talking with the city's engineers, we were looking over the site, and you'll remember on the site plan, there's 2 different kind of stormwater management systems. There's the kind of green infrastructure retention pond in the middle of the plaza that's kind of acting as greenery and landscaping for the plaza. But there's also some infiltration, and that does have a potential connection to the city's stormwater system out on Broadway. In the rear of the parcel, we have a stormwater tanks that are kind of a slow infiltration system in the back. So what the engineer rightly pointed out is he noticed that the project is also also in the brownfield cleanup program. And so he questioned, can you do infiltration if your site is a brownfield, which is a good question that often, surprisingly, even though DEC regulates both these things, right, stormwater management and brownfield cleanup, there is a little bit of a conflict between the regulations between those two programs. But we are addressing it. DEC is aware of what we are proposing on site for stormwater management, and it really will end up depending on what level, they call them tracks. So what track level of cleanup we do on the site will depend on what level of infiltration we can have, or whether there needs to be there needs to be some kind of like screen or plastic kind of buffer between these things. So right now, based on the track cleanup that we're proposing, we believe that we will be able to do the system that we are proposing on the site plan. That's why it's what is proposed. We're a little bit too early in the DEC process to state that for sure. Right now, we are in the remediation investigation work plan. So that's being reviewed by DEC and is open for public comment. Once that work plan is started, then we can actually get into site and start doing the investigation for what the remediation will need to be. And that's when the track of cleanup will be identified. And so, again, we fully believe that what we're showing is what we intend to do, because we intend to fully clean the site, remove any contaminated soils, and then be able to do infiltration on site. If for whatever reason that changes through our DEC process with the brownfield cleanup program, we will have to come back and seek an amendment for our stormwater management on site. But just so the board knows, the contaminants on site were minor. What was it? We kind of just squeaked ourselves into the voluntary BCP cleanup program. This wasn't mandated. We weren't like an identified brownfield site that needed to be cleaned up by DEC. We voluntarily entered the program because we did find some metals in the soil, organic compounds in the soil, as well as CVOCs in the soil vapor. So all those are intended to be cleaned up through this program.
Right. All right, you better go make yourself a cup of coffee, because we got a lot of resolutions here to go through.
I'm ready. I'm just like jazzed on excitement right now. So I don't even need coffee.
We do seeker first.
Yes, you have to do seeker first.
That would be the bold face one, I think.
Yeah.
Was there anything that had to be filled in on this? You're good.
Seeker, no, but we need a form later.
So I can go ahead and read this.
Go ahead. Okay.
All right, this resolution of the City of Kingston Planning Board issuing a negative declaration of environmental significance for the site plan and lot line provision of number 615 Broadway and a portion of 35 Cedar Street, Kingston, New York, 12401. Section block and lot is 56.109-3-16 and 56.109-3-42. Whereas the planning board of the City of Kingston, in parentheses the board, located in Ulster County, New York, is considering an application for site plan approval from Baxter Development Corporation Company, which is the applicant, for the proposed construction of a mixed-use building with 70 residential units, 7,000 square feet of ground floor commercial space, 37 parking spaces, and an outdoor plaza, hereinafter referred to as the action. And whereas the action also includes a lot line revision of the 2 parcels and 3 waiver requests under planning board review. And whereas the action is located in the T5MS transect zone at 615 Broadway, owned by the City of Kingston, and in the T5N transect over the portion of 35 Cedar Street, owned by the Salvation Army with Baxter Development Company, pursuing purchase of the land to be used in the development prior to construction commencement. And whereas the site historically was used as residential and commercial, including a produce warehouse in the 1950s, and as a motel and parking lot in the 1970s to 2000. That was demolished by the City of Kingston. A series of subsequent requests for proposals were put out to encourage development of the site, culminating with Baxter Development Company being chosen as the qualified developer. And whereas the project is considered an unlisted action under 6 NYC RR 617.5, and a short environmental assessment form was submitted for review and consideration. And whereas in addition to the short EAF, the board reviewed and considered the documents listed on Schedule A attached hereto and made part of this determination. And whereas in accordance with Seeker 6 NYC RR Part 617, the board recognized the action as unlisted and required a short environmental assessment form, the FEAF.
SEAF.
Yep. You making that correction there? Okay. As the SEAF be submitted. And whereas the board held a public hearing on the action, which was opened on September 16, 2024, and closed on May 19, 2025. And whereas the board conducted a site visit to the to the project location on August 13, 2024. And whereas the planning board recognizes the applicant's voluntary participation in the brownfield cleanup program and includes its decision the requirement that the applicants will follow the final remedial action work plan as approved by the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation. And whereas the board has considered the seeker environmental assessment form and other materials submitted by the applicant in support of the proposed action, written comments from other municipal agency heads as are incorporated herein by reference, as well as verbal commentary made during the planning board's meetings and public hearings pertaining to the review and evaluation of the proposed action. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the planning board of the city of Kingston, New York, as follows. Section 1, in accordance with Seeker 6 NYC RR Part 617, that the proposed unlisted action, as described herein, will not have a significant adverse effect on the environment, and further determines that preparation of an environmental impact statement will not be required. Section 2, the planning board has relied upon the facts and information contained in its record file regarding the proposed unlisted action, as well as discussions with and mitigation measures imposed in making the above secret determination of non-significance, which is a negative declaration. Section 3, a copy of this resolution and attached seeker notice of determination of non-significance with the negative declaration shall be maintained by the planning board and filed with the City of Kingston City Clerk, as well as to the applicant/owner. Section 4, that this resolution shall take effect immediately. This time I will make a motion that we adopt this resolution. Do I have a second? Second by Charles Palaco. Any question, discussion on the motion? Okay, Wayne Platt is a yes. Charles Palaco.
Yes.
Robert Jacobson.
Yes.
Matthew Gillis.
Yes.
Vince Archer.
Yes.
This is adopted.
You want to sign this?
So the second one, the long one.
Lot line relationship or relationship. Sign that.
If it's gonna do this, let's go the other.
You do the preference?
Let's go the other.
With the other one? Okay. That's cool. We know we're good. Okay.
Any changes on this one?
Nope, this one's.
This one's to. Okay.
This is a lot variation.
I'm doing it shorter one of the two.
Yes.
Okay. You want this? Okay, good.
So resolution of City of Kingston Planning Board approving a lot line revision between 615 Broadway and 35 Cedar Street, Kingston, New York, 12401, SBL 56.109-3-16 and 56.109-3-42. Whereas Baxter Development Company, the applicant, submitted lot line revision application in coordination with site plan application for construction of a mixed-use building with 70 residential units, 7,000 square feet of commercial space, and 3,630 square feet of courtyard plaza. The action. And whereas the project is located at 615 Broadway and a portion of 35 Cedar Street, section block and lot 56.109-3-16 and 56.109-3-42. And whereas the action is located in the T5MS Transact Zone at 615 Broadway, owned by the city of Kingston, and in the T5N Transact over the portion of 35 Cedar Street, owned by the Salvation Army, with Baxter Development Company pursuing purchase of the land to be used in the development prior to construction commencement. And whereas the Salvation Army submitted a letter of authorization to apply for both the lot line revision and the site plan dated June 3rd, 2000. And whereas the board conducted a public hearing on September 16th, 2024, for both the lot line deletion and the site plans with waivers, with said hearing remaining open for written and oral comments until May 19th, 2025 planning board meeting, at which point the board officially closed the hearing. And whereas the board determined the action to be unlisted under secret pursuant to 6 NYCRR Part 617 and voted to render a negative declaration of environmental significance on June 16th, 2025. And whereas the applicant will be entering into an easement agreement for the purpose of ingress, egress, parking, utilities, and maintenance between the owners of 615 Broadway, 35 Cedar Street, and 609 Broadway. And whereas a regulatory agreement has been submitted to the city of Kingston for review and consideration and will be finalized prior to any transfer of the property. And whereas the board determined the action to be a type 2 action under secret part 617.5, subsection C, subsection 16, pursuant to 6 NYCRR.
Understood.
Or
Understood, actually.
No, lot line division, not lot line division.
Oh, the lot line, okay, I'm sorry, yeah.
no, okay. 617 and voted to render a negative declaration of environmental significance on June 16, 2025. And now therefore be resolved by the City of Kingston Planning Board as follows. Section 1. After thorough review of all documentation and public comment, the board votes to approve the lot line division as depicted on the map. Lot line adjustment plan drawn by LCR Group revised date December 6, 2024. Section 2, that a minimum of 5 paper copies and 1 Mylar copy of the approved map is submitted with owner signatures along with resultant parcel descriptions shall be provided to the planning staff for review and approval prior to the chairman signing maps. Section 3, prior to signature of chairman on the final plat maps for filing, easement agreement for ingress, egress, parking, utilities, and maintenance in the form satisfactory to corporation council shall be fully executed. 615 Broadway, 35 Cedar Street, and 609 Broadway, and ready for filing at the county with final maps. Section 4, approval of regulatory agreement between Baxter Development Company and the City of Kingston. Section 5, this resolution shall take effect immediately. You'll make a motion. I'll make a motion that be approved.
Motion by Robert Jacobson with a second by Charles Palaco to adopt this resolution. Any discussion? Okay, Wayne Platt is a yes. Charles Palaco?
Yes.
Robert Jacobson?
Yes.
Matthew Gillis?
Yes.
Vince Archer?
Yes.
This resolution is adopted.
Oh, okay, all right.
So we're going to go ahead to the last one. Robert's going to start.
Are you gonna end up? Motion?
No, this, he did the motion.
Yeah, for the next one, you're making this your motion. I appreciate that. Right, especially meetings.
Yeah.
Okay.
We thought we did the motion in a second. You have to read it to the top. Okay.
Ready?
Yeah.
Yeah. Resolution of the City of Kingston Planning Board approving the site plan for a 70-unit residential development with 7,000 square feet of ground floor commercial space to be located at 615 Broadway and a portion of 35 Cedar Street, Kingston, New York, 401. SBL 56.109-3-16 and 56.109-3-42. Whereas Baxter Development Company, the applicant, submitted application plans and other supporting documentation to the City of Kingston Planning Board of the Board for construction of a mixed-use building with 70 residential units, 7,000 square feet of commercial space, and 3,630 square feet of the action. And whereas the action includes a lot line revision to add additional lands to 615 Broadway, SBL 56.109-3-15, and reducing the size of 35 Cedar Street, section block and lot 56.109-3-32, owned by the Salvation Army. And whereas the action contains three major waiver requests for deviation from strict adherence to the form-based code. 1, frontage occupancy, section 405.6 require 90% frontage occupancy, proposed 72.99%. Building height, number 2, building height, section 405.6, subsection D, within 20 feet of the rear lot line, buildings may not be more than a half-story taller than the allowed height of adjacent buildings. Maximum 4-story, 5 stories proposed. Number 3, first floor height, section 405.6, subsection D requires 16 feet. In the T5 MS as proposed, it's 14 feet 6 inches. Whereas the action is located in the T5 MS Transact Zone at 615 Broadway, owned by the City of Kingston, and in the T5N Transact over the portion of 30 Cedar Street, owned by the Salvation Army, with Baxter Development pursuing purchase of land to be used in development prior to construction commencement. And whereas the site historically was used as residential and commercial, including a produce warehouse in the 1950s and as a hotel and parking lot in the 1970s through 2000, that was demolished by the city of Kingston. A series of subsequent requests for proposals were put out to encourage development of the site, culminating with Baxter Development Company being chosen as the qualified developer. And whereas the applicant attended planning board meetings for preliminary discussion in June and July of 2024, followed by formal application and initial review in September 2024, with subsequent plan revisions and planning board meetings resulting in the current design configuration. Whereas the board conducted a site visit to the project location on August 13, 2024, whereas the board conducted a public hearing on September 16, 2024 for both the lot line deletion and the site plan with major waivers, with said hearing remaining open for written oral comments until May 19, 2025 planning board meeting, and at which point the board officially closed the hearing. And whereas the board has reviewed and considered comments from the city engineer, building safety division, city fire chief, Kingston Water Department, Department of Public Works, Ulster County Planning Board, Arts Commission, and the general public. And whereas all documentation outlined in attachment A, review document listing June 16, 2025, and comments are made part of this review in their full form. And whereas all public comments, supporting documentation, plans, relevant studies, and meeting documents are posted to the City of Kingston portal website for access by the public. And whereas the board determined the action to be unlisted under secret pursuant to 6 NYCRR Part 617 and voted to render a negative declaration of environmental significance on June 16, 2025. And whereas on June 16, 2025, the board approved the lot line revision with conditions to transfer 9,053 square feet, 35 Cedar Street and 615 Broadway. And whereas the applicant submitted a communication to the city school district on March 24th, 2025, with respect to no anticipated school impact and no response or feedback have been returned after an additional follow-up by staff. And whereas the action and supporting materials were provided to the City of Kingston Parks and Recreation Commission, but no recommendation was provided to the planning board due to lack of quorum at the June 2025 meeting. And whereas the action was referred to the Ulster County Planning Board and recommendation returned under referral number 2025-058 dated May 7, 2025, and whereas the applicant will be required to execute and record an easement agreement between 615 Broadway LLC, the Salvation Army, and JMS 609 Broadway LLC for ingress, egress, parking, utility, maintenance over land of 615 Broadway LLC. And whereas the applicant will be required to enter and record a regulatory agreement from 615 Broadway LLC and the City of Kingston for the provision of workforce and affordable housing. Now, therefore, be resolved by the City of Kingston Planning Board as follows. Section 1. After thorough review of all documentation and public comment, the board votes to approve the site plan with major waivers to construct a mixed-use building with 70 residential units and 7,000 square feet of commercial space, with building height ranging from 3 to 5 stories and a courtyard plaza continued to be known as the Pauline Oliveros Deep Listening Plaza. Section 2, approval shall include all conditions as follows. Based on the submitted and approved detailed cost estimates, submission of a performance bond to the city of Kingston, the amount of $1,500,000 in form satisfactory to the planning staff and corporation council prior to any issuance of any building permits. All improvements with the public right of way shall be as follows. A final sign off by the Department of Public Works, a final sign off by the city engineer. Compliance with the SWIP review and approved by the city engineer dated May 30th, 2025, as revised. The applicant shall be responsible for working directly with the city engineer to provide the
NOI.
NOI and O&M manual after the project is completed and finally is at NOT. Installation of a sprinkler system and fire safety measures is specified by the chief of the city of Kingston Fire Department. Final sign off of all fire safety matters from the city fire chief, including but not limited to materials used in the fire safety installation. No EV bicycle charging internal to any unit and only in approved areas by the Kingston Fire Department. Final sign off of the Kingston Water Department for water connections and final determination on existing water line usage or termination. The applicant will work directly with the Kingston Water Department to comply with all requirements and standards. The following board policies are hereby incorporated. Policy 1, 1A, stormwater compliance. Policy 3, 3A, and 3B, as-built plans and performance bond. Policy 4, 4A, lighting. Policy 6, affirmation of compliance with approved plans. Policy 7, approved timeframes. Policy 8, 8A, clerk of the work project directory. Policy 9, survey mark out new construction within 10 feet of the property lines. Policy 10, signage compliance with section 405.17. Policy 12, maintain accurate contact information. Policy 13, dig safely on plans utility contract. Policy 14, 14A, zoning data. Policy 16, 16A, 16B, affordable workforce housing requirements. Contact with school district landlord registration. Policy 17, 17A, payment in lieu of parkland and signed statement. Policy 18, noise ordinance compliance. Policy 20, carbon monoxide detectors. Policy 22, sidewalk standards. Policy 23, knock blocks. Policy 24, required building permit in required time frame. Refuse and recycling collection will be by private hauler. Final sign-offs of the United States Postal Service for location design of mail receptacle. Continuing compliance with the site management memo signed by Natalie Flynn, agent for the applicant, submitted with the revision date of April 30th, 2025. Conformance with all plans, documents, and specifications defined by attachment A with new documents dated June 16, 2025, unless otherwise noted herein. Affordable housing requirements as for the city of Kingston zoning code 405.19, 10% affordable and 10% workforce, totaling 7 units each dispersed throughout the building. Applicant to provide copies of file D covenants that provide for continued use of 14 units under the city zoning code for the life of the use at regulated housing. Regulatory agreement executed filed at the county clerk's office or other governmental office as required by law. Finally, at the Ulster County Clerk's Office of the lot line revision maps and deeds along with fully executed easements as approved by City Corporation Council. Proof of filings is required prior to issuance of any building permits. Compliance with the submitted parking supply and demand reduction strategy. Compliance with New York State PDC final work plan as determined under the brownfield cleanup program. As-built drawings will be certified by design professionals and provide to the planning office all newly constructed and installed plan elements prior to any final bond release and final certificate of occupancy. Section 3 waivers. A, major waiver. Frontage occupancy, section 405.6B. The zoning code requires that the frontage occupancy in a T5 MS be 90% minimum. The intent of this section is to create a walkable streetscape that maximizes the facade exposure along the street or open space. The frontage occupancy was increased due to the access stair for the second and third floors on the Broadway facing the building incorporated into the building form. The original waiver request proposed a 69.5-foot frontage occupancy. The architectural revisions now propose 72.19%. Board finding, the applicants provided reasoning for the waiver request, which includes retention of community open space on site to preserve the existing use of site created by Pauline Olvera's Deep Listening Plaza was a direct request of the city of Kingston through the original RFP process. While the proposed open space was originally proposed directly along Broadway, it was pulled back into a semi-internal plaza within the development so that a greater amount of building frontage could occupy the front property line. This site is unique to maintain a public open space, and the applicants have expressed the need to keep certain access width to maintain an open and welcoming entry to the public plaza that will continue to function as the Pauline listening space. The wider entry also allows for better emergency access to the interior of the site for fire and police waiver approved. B, neighborhood. Principal building height section 405, subsection D, subsection 3, within 20 feet of the rear lot line buildings may not be more than a half story taller than the allowed height of adjacent buildings. Applicant reasoning. Within 20 feet of the rear lot line, buildings may not be more than a half story taller than the allowed height of adjacent buildings. The rear lot line of 615 Broadway is abutted by parcels within a T4N and the T4NO zoning districts, which permit a maximum building height of up to 2.5 stories, 3.5 with a bonus. Therefore, making the permitted maximum building 4 stories within 20 feet of the rear property line. The applicant is requesting a waiver of this requirement to permit a maximum building height of 5 stories within the portion of the building highlighted in red below. The impact of granting this waiver will have a minimum impact on the community as the rest of the building remains 5 stories as permitted by the code. Additionally, not granting this waiver would result in the loss of 2 much needed affordable housing units within the city of Kingston. Board finding. The board reviewed the visuals at several meetings over the course of the review. The applicants have demonstrated in renderings the section of the building that would be reduced if the requirements were met. A shadow study was also submitted to show the impacts of shadows on adjacent properties. The board reviewed the difference in shadows to neighboring properties and found that they were very minimal change and a decrease in rear height. Waiver was approved. C, minor waiver. First floor height, section 405.6, subsection D. The code requires 16 feet, the first floor height, T5 MS transit, reference sheet A 201.00. The board recognizes that the planning administrator has elevated consideration by planning board as this is a master site plan and there are other waivers also being considered, which helps to streamline the process. Applicant reasoning, the required floor-to-floor minimum height within the T5 MS zoning district is 16 feet. The proposed building facade along Broadway was designed specifically to align with the facade details of the immediately adjacent historic building at 611 Broadway, which also has a first floor height of 14 feet 6 inches. The applicant is requesting a waiver of this requirement to permit a first floor height of 14.6. Board finding. The intent of the code and the T5 MS is to encourage development that is keeping with the traditional characteristics of the area, but also to encourage commercial storefronts along main streets within a specific steps. The applicants are proposing a first floor height that is scaled to match contextually in line with existing historic buildings along Broadway. Although changes to the first floor height are being considered by the council for amendment to the FBC, this location is not being considered for an amendment. It is the opinion of the board that using the conceptual basis for the first floor height does not diminish the walkability of the street, context of the development, or oppose the intent and integrity of the FBC. Waiver approved. Section 4. The board finds that the anticipated increase in population is defined by creating 70 residential units that will cause the need for continued upkeep and improvements to park facilities, which provide recreational opportunities for residents. Recognizing that the project does offer a privately owned courtyard plaza intended to be open to the public during commercial business hours with some green space and outdoor seating areas. The board concurs that this project will result in increased use of nearby parks and facilities for programs and passive and active recreation. Such increases require strategic planning to meet the needs of our residents. High quality life experiences for all. Each impact, small or large, must be taken into consideration so we can best prepare for the future of our community spaces and offerings. The Recreation Trust Fund is utilized to help supply new playgrounds, pavilions, and amenities to contribute back to the city parks and programs and allow for the department to continue to grow its recreation opportunities. To meet the community needs, the board finds that the payment rule park plan in the amount of $2,000 per unit assessed to the project as follows.
So with 70 total units, the first 4 are exempt. The balance of the units, which is 66 units, multiplied by the $2,000 per unit, and the $2,000 is being considered a reduced amount due to the public open space amenity. You have a total fee being assessed of $132,000.
The fee will be placed into the Recreation Trust Fund for future use in compliance with the local law. Therefore, the board finds that the payment rule park plan fee of $132,000 be reduced for issuance of any building permits. Section 5, concurrence with the Ulster County Planning Board required modifications that affordable housing designated for 80% or less of the Ulster County AMI be spread throughout the project and not limited to only studio apartments, but instead be distributed evenly across all apartment unit classifications, single and two-family, as well as studio. Section 6, approval of the board does not eliminate the need for obtaining the appropriate permits and approvals from other boards, commissions, departments, and relevant agencies. 7, that this resolution shall take effect immediately.
Motion by Robert, and there's somebody.
Second by Matt Gillis.
Any discussion?
Okay, all in favor, Wayne Platt is a yes. Charles Palaco. Yes. Robert Jacobson.
Yes.
Matthew Gillis.
Yes.
Vince Archer.
Yes.
Susan adopted. Right.
Thank you all. I appreciate the board working with us for the past few months. So thank you very much. We're excited to bring this project to Broadway.
All right, well, it's sad not to see you anymore, so, good luck.
I'll look for another project in Kingston. I'll be back. But thank you all very much. Have a good night.
All right, you too.
Good night, Natalie.
Thank you.
Let's look through everything that's done and I want to get all.
No, I asked you that. I asked you, yes, the next item.
What's the point?
And, Langer fabrication showing.
Ninja. Right. Yeah, I mean, they all students.
We're gonna go.
Wait for the signatures. There's.
Oh, okay. Was it really button? Yeah. Okay. All right, item number 10 is 206 and 208 Flatbush Avenue. Site plan / subdivision for multifamily housing in major and minor. Section block and lot is 48.74-3-24 and 48.74-3-19. Secret determination. Transect zone SD-MF Ward 6. Kingston Housing Authority is the owner. Come on up, gentlemen.
Good evening, everyone. For the record, my name is John Matteo. I'm the Executive Vice President of Mountco Construction and Development, and we're Kingston Housing Authority's partner on this project. Geralda Wilcox, the Executive Director of the Housing Authority, will be here tonight, except she's attending her son's graduation. So first things first, but she, I know, would want to thank you for how hard you've worked with us to improve the site plan. With me tonight, John First, our attorney, and Joe Nitre, part of our civil engineering firm. We're not asking for any action on behalf of the board tonight. We know that we owe you a few things, and perhaps what would be helpful for us is just to clarify what we owe you. And I think Sue has given us some indication of that, and we can go over that a little bit just to make sure we understand it. And then secondly, just in context, I think you are aware of this. This project, we're seeking funding through the New York State Housing Finance Agency. We're asking the agency for about $80 million in tax exempt bonds. And we're asking for the State Housing Agency for about $36 million in subsidy for the project. We're in competition with all other housing authorities in the state. Not to get ahead of ourselves, but we want to put in an application to the state as quickly as possible. If that application can contain a site plan approval that will put us head and shoulders above some of the other housing authorities we're competing against and make us more competitive and give us an opportunity to actually start construction by the end of this year. The earlier we can get in the application, the better. We know you can't take or aren't going to take any action tonight, but we can talk about what your schedule is after that. That would be really helpful.
Yeah, we have had an email circulated to the board members about possibility of having a special meeting, so you don't have to wait till the next meeting. So that's, you probably know about that, and that's been circulated, right? So we're just in.
That would be terrific, because that would allow, if that meeting is scheduled sometime early-ish in July, that would let us get the application into July, into the state. And the state has been working with us. They know that we've been working through the site plan process with you. So we know a few things that we have to go through. So I don't know if you want to raise them just to make sure we catch everything going through. And John, I don't know if you don't want to cover everything.
Okay, and what we'll probably do, John, I'll share with you for we're scheduling a special meeting tonight, but before that, I'll probably share with you some drafted resolutions.
Sure.
Very similar to what you just heard us go through with the 615 Broadway. So I can do that for you as well, so you'll know in advance. So a couple things that are more major would be for the city engineer. He's looking for drainage for the SWIP. He's looking for the calculations. He's also looking for the results of soil borings and the results of those to confirm that, you know, the proposed drainage scheme that you are showing on your plans can be accommodated on the site. So that's a really big ticket item. And, you know, he will need that obviously a little bit in advance of any meeting we schedule, so that he has an opportunity to review it and get your comments. If he does have any or concerns, that you can adjust them before we're ready to go that evening. So that's one large item. Another big thing would be for you to give us the detailed cost estimate on site work improvements that you need, that typically is reviewed by both our staff and the city engineer. And we present an amount to the board. The board will need to set that amount. Something that actually works to their advantage is this recreation. They also went to the rec commission for the payment in lieu of parkland fee. Again, they did not make any recommendation back to us. But by coming back in July, we're thinking that the new law will be in effect. So we'll be using that to apply to this project. And the Housing Authority obviously has in perpetuity the housing will be used for. So they will be preparing deed covenants and that for those restrictions that go with that. So that's another to their advantage. There are some architectural things that I spoke to John about that we'll be getting you them in detail, but really, where are all of the exterior elements of your HVAC units located and how do they connect in? We want to see those final plans. Intake grates, we want to see treatments on those. Some final elevation plans with the condensers, and that treatment is something we need to see as well. I don't know if there's been any like building signage proposed. We have not seen any. I don't know if any is planned, but if you are going to be incorporated sign, which I would think they'll do something.
Absolutely.
We want to see that. Right? Other than your standard, handicap parking, that kind of thing, we want to see identification signage. And for 911 purposes, we just want to make sure that whatever you do is works on there on the end as well. Site lighting, I think we've got everything, just confirming all wiring, everything's gonna be underground for the new stuff. If you can possibly go over, I know that the board has been really focusing on the Penn Court, the new building. But there are site improvements that are being made on the Colonial Gardens side of things that the board has kind of not really focused on. So if you could just kind of go over what those are for the board members tonight. I know there's playgrounds that are being added, there's community space being added. You're upgrading your, your refuse and recycling areas. Maybe just talk a little bit about that for a minute.
Sure. I mean, I think Colonial Gardens, you're gonna see a major transformation of Colonial Gardens. A lot of it's through landscaping. And we have a full landscaping plan, which we've submitted. And at the next meeting, we'll have our landscape architect here, and he can go through it point by point, much better than I can. But we're going to see some major improvements there. As Sue said,
There's a plan up behind you if you want to use that. I mean, to kind of guide you.
Sure. So there's a tie-in, where are we here? Over here is Penn Court, right?
Yep.
Okay. So there's a tie-in here. Right now, the two sites sort of blend together poorly, quite frankly. And now we're going to blend them together through a consistent landscaping plan. And you're going to see that. Curbs and sidewalks are all going to be improved. There are two playgrounds there that, again, are dysfunctional at this point, and we'll have some details on that to show you what that's going to be. So you're going to see a major transformation. You're not going to see very much difference in terms of the exterior of the building. Okay, they're going to be improved, power washed, painted, clean, new roofs, new window treatments, new windows, not window treatments. So you're going to see some improvements there, but the buildings themselves are going to be fairly, the look is going to be pretty much the same. And again, we're limited by funding to be able to do that. But you are going to see a major transformation. So we'll talk about that. We'll have the architect here the next meeting. You can talk more about the design elements there. And I would say the same thing is happening at Wiltwyck, where we're keeping the buildings. We're making some significant changes in both Wiltwyck and Colonial Gardens. We're providing brand new community rooms and office space as part of the existing buildings. Obviously, Penn Court will have its own community room and office space there as well.
Okay.
With these alterations that you just talked about, will that entail displacing any residents at all?
Yeah, in some cases, we have to, and we've done, if you recall, we did actually, we didn't come before the planning board, I don't think, for Van Dyke, right?
No.
Because it was all a renovation. In Van Dyke, we relocated about 100, there were 100 residents, households there, and we had to move them around because of asbestos and lead-based paint issues. Here, we've got a similar problem. So we are going to relocate people. We pay for those relocation costs. We move them, and then they have the option to either stay in the new renovated apartment or to come back to the building that they were in. But that will all be part of the project.
So one of the areas that's also being improved is the refuse enclosure area. So one of the questions we had is that area also going to serve the Penn Court? Or is Penn Court has its own refuse recycling so that they're not required. That's going to be really for the Colonial.
It's going to be separate, Joe. I don't know if you want to talk about that, but yeah, Penn Court will have its own system and Wiltwyck will have its own, and Colonial will have its own.
Yeah, so Penn Court, we don't show anything outside of the building like we do on the Colonial Gardens. Everything in Penn Court is going to be collected inside, and then on the day of pickup, containers will be rolled out to the parking lot up at the north there on the Colonial Drive side, picked up. So everything will just be all the residents in the Penn Court building disposing of the garbage inside the building.
But for Colonial and Wiltwyck, there'll be exterior.
Yes, exterior garbage enclosures, as you can see here. So our updated garbage enclosures are up here and down here.
Okay, and they're enclosed.
Yes.
And screened.
Charging areas.
EV charging?
Yeah.
Yeah, there is, I know there's 4 EV charging spots on the Penn Court. And I do know in the, I don't know if anybody looked at, hopefully you've read the parking reduction demand study that was submitted and posted. I don't know if you want to speak a little bit to that, but that does talk to, I think that mentions potential for interior or accommodation for 50 bikes. So
Yeah.
we're kind of curious. I mean, we're presuming those are outside or are they inside rooms or?
Yeah, we're planning to have interior space, correct, for bikes. So
Okay.
we may have some outside bike racks as well. But we want it for storage purposes. We want to be able to do that indoors.
And this is in the new building?
Just in the new building.
Is there anything being done in the existing buildings?
I didn't.
Anything being done with the existing buildings?
And not for, there'll probably be bike racks, but I don't think there'll be anything interior. We don't have the space.
So there's over 50 bikes in the new building?
Yeah.
That's senior housing?
Yeah.
Okay.
And there would be, I guess this leads to what the fire department generally comments on, if any of them are EV bikes and EV charging, that they're not being charged internally in individual units, but that there's a set aside space, dedicated space, and that will have specific construction requirements that the fire department will oversee and give you instructions.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the chief mentioned that when he came out for the site visit.
Yep.
And we'll comply with all of those requirements.
Okay.
And from our site visit, did you ever finalize like the generator and how it's gonna be installed in the hill and?
Yeah.
You want to talk about the generator?
Yes, so the generator, can't see it on this plan, this is the Colonial Gardens, but our generator is up over, here on the hill. We have it,
Carlos still trying to find you.
Okay.
But is that generator gonna be behind the building, dug in? Is there access to it? Because we weren't sure, like.
yes. So this generator is gonna be diesel, it's not gonna be maintained very often. So the access will be, the diesel truck will come, it'll park in that parking lot up there to the north, they'll run the hose up, walk right up to the pad there. The pad will be slightly dug in, so the backside wall will be, you'll actually see the wall will be a cut wall, and then you'll have a little bit of a retaining wall on the front, just to have the pad leveled off there. And we avoid the gas easement, with everything there. But yeah, if we can zoom in on this area over there.
But you're talking up right?
Yes, right over here. So this is our, we just show the generator pad for now. Once the generator size is determined, if anything, the pad will shrink in size. We just showed the largest now.
Is
to show the
that
combi.
a self-contained generator where it has soundproofing because it's
Yes.
inside a building, basically?
Yes. So this wall here will be our cut wall. So if you're standing on the pad, you'll actually, and looking this way, you will see the wall. If you're standing on the pad and looking this way, it'll be like looking off a little bit of an edge. So we'll have the wall with a fence on top of the wall, as we show here, just to enclose it in, yes. And the parking for the diesel truck would be right in this parking lot up here, and they could run the hose right up.
More questions? Of anything? Like I said, that was something new that was submitted, was the parking supply and demand reduction strategy. If you spoke to the fact that are you putting a bus stop in this project in Penn Court at all? Or do you anticipate?
I don't think a bus stop. I think we have a bus area where they can come in and turn around.
Right, okay.
And I think I think, and correct me, Joe, I think that there's pathways out to Flatbush Avenue where the buses stop.
Okay.
So they're
And through site plan, we determine traffic flow and all that one way.
That's right, there is traffic circulation in the traffic analysis, and it's only gonna be one way going in onto Flatbush, but it will be two-way. When they turn around, you'll have to turn around before you can't exit at that point, that'll be a turnaround area.
Yeah, we hashed out a parking space down here, so if you get to the end,
Right.
you can, you have the ability to turn around.
I'm going to talk a little bit about like the construction phasing and demolition, kind of how phasing, that kind of thing. I don't know, John, I'm not.
Yeah, I thought that, and correct me if I'm wrong, did we submit a demolition plan and a phasing plan?
Yes.
We did, and again, we'll talk about that. Our construction people went over it. We plan to do both at the same time. So in other words, well, we plan to do three things at the same time. First thing, obviously, is we're starting to relocate people out of Penn Court now. And we have opportunities to move them into other units that the Housing Authority has. So that when we take over the property, whether it's December or January, Penn Court is going to be vacant. So one of the first things that we're going to do is to demolish Penn Court. And we have a whole plan on that. And again, we'll go into that in more detail at the next meeting. But at the same time, we're going to start work on the rehabilitation of Colonial Gardens and Wiltwick. Wiltwick is sort of a one-off. It's a way, it's a little bit easier. The Colonial Gardens and Penn Court site is going to be a little bit trickier because there's going to be a lot going on there. But the construction people, I think, have laid out a good plan to.
So just one point for the board. John is talking about Wiltwick Gardens, which is the Kingston Housing Authority project on Albany Avenue. That is being, because it's the majority of it is interior renovations and changes, but there is some exterior work that is being looked at as a minor site plan. It doesn't elevate up to major. So we're looking at that internally that way. So that's why you're not seeing it, but it's happening all at the same time. So I just wanted to clarify.
So, but at any rate, the demolition plan and the construction plan accounts for trips in and out, truck wise, and how we're going to handle that, and relocation of the signage. And again, the rehabilitation of Stuyvesant was similar in the sense that similar to Colonial has a number of buildings. There were, I think, 15 buildings there. We had to work around that. But I think the plan we have is very, very good.
I think that's how well we talked about the performance bond. So Dory spoke about the waivers. There are 5 with this one, but we've already gone through them. So when we hold the final meeting, we'll go through each one of them again individually, like we did tonight with 15, discuss what they are and talk about the actual findings of the board. Other than that, I don't have anything unless the board has any other questions. I'd like to talk about the special meeting date. We did put something out there. I'd like to see how everybody feels about the 7th. It's a Monday.
If this will help, I think in terms of the items that you raised this evening, we know you need time to review them. We think we're going to be able to have them for you next week.
Okay, great.
What about the engineer?
What?
What about the engineer, his information?
That's
Next
all
week?
things, yes.
Yeah, Joe is with him.
Yeah.
No, but I mean, to our engineer, they'll have all that stuff. Right?
Oh, yes. So
Yeah.
we'll have
We'll submit everything to Sue and we'll distribute.
That should give us enough time, right? For him to review.
Yeah, July 7th was the date that we put out there that sounded like it was convenient for the majority of people. It's also a time when this room is free, which is another tricky thing. But about 5 o'clock, if that works. Does July 7th work for you at 5 o'clock?
Sure. We'll make it work. Yeah.
They'll have everything with it.
No, they'll have, this is a special meeting. They'll have everything hopefully to us next week.
Okay, so they don't have to have, do they have to have everything by July 2nd as a submission?
No, that's for the July meeting. That's the regular meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, no, we're not working on for that.
We're not sure that I'm here.
Okay.
I'm good for the 5 o'clock, that's 8 or 7.
You want to check your schedule? I mean, we will have,
You know, I'm just not like,
you're not sure.
not sure because I may be away for that's 4th of July weekend.
Okay,
I may be coming back Monday if it's not showing me back on time. Then might be
Okay.
coming back Monday or Tuesday or something.
Okay, we also had
The night.
the 9th. How about the 9th at 5?
Wednesday.
Oh, you took that up?
Huh?
I can't do that.
Okay. Chuck, what about the 9th? I know you said the 7th was good for you.
You said July 10th was there.
Let me just double check the room.
You do either. Okay. Vince, you're good?
I think so.
I feel like
Sage?
Either is fine.
Okay.
I could
Oh,
probably.
you have the 10th on.
Huh?
Yeah.
Emails of the 10th, not.
Thanks, Billy.
No, that makes difference.
Yeah, the top line, but.
Okay, so which dates are we looking at?
I'm
The email from Carlos is the
mostly
10th.
positive it was a Wednesday though.
Oh, okay.
The 9th.
Yes.
Well, we'll come on Monday and we'll just sleep over until. We'll just camp out until you guys.
So conference room 1 is available. Yes, the 9th, not the 10th.
Okay, at 5 o'clock. The 9th at 5.
Yes, we would have 5, there's a meeting at 6:30.
Finance and audit needs to.
Finance,
So finance,
so
so-
we need to be out by.
Not a
6:30.
Yes.
Stay for the finance and audit committee meeting.
I don't want to, I'll be here for the night. I can-
9th,
That they can do, right?
Nine. 9th, 9th, yes, Sage, 9th?
Fine, that's fine.
Okay, we're calling it the 9th
5
at
o'clock.
5 p.m.
What time do we have to be on here by?
You want to zoom in? You want to zoom in?
And you can get it all in the calendar.
Okay.
Okay. So, I need a motion to table and then a motion, and then, if somebody just wants to make, and if a table's
Motion to table.
and schedule a special meeting.
I'll second the motion to table. Okay, all in favor? Table item number 10.
10.
There's all in favor? Aye, opposed, carried, great.
Motion. Yeah, I mean, for the meeting we should set up. right?
Yep.
Motion for meeting.
Yep.
I'll make a motion for a special, planning board meeting July 9th at 5 p.m. Here in White City Hall. We do. Yep.
Okay, so you wish a second? Matt? Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
I just have a quick question. You have local law.
Yeah, it should be on the process.
Yeah. Really.
It's also on
Two more
the
items.
word, page from May. They were, yes.
So I'm sure.
Okay, we have a rezoning request, but we also have the, proposed tree ordinance. And, Brent is here, so I'm gonna just suggest that we allow him to do his discussion on the proposed tree ordinance, and then we'll go back to the items that we don't have people here sitting around the table for. Brent? Yes. You're up. Brent is our new city urban forester. He is been hired by the city starting last September. He is under a grant, a 4-year grant. So he's been doing a lot of different work, not only with the tree commission, but as you know, he's worked with some of the project developments. He just worked with he's been working with the one we were just talking about on Clapham Avenue, as well as the 615 Broadway. He provided some feedback for them to assist them in their landscaping design. So there is a proposed tree ordinance out there to update current and replace it, but it expands it quite a bit. We wanted to. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I don't want to take up too much of the planning board's time this evening, but I wanted to touch on this proposed ordinance that is currently under review for laws and rules. And this review process will be coming back up on Wednesday's laws and rules meeting as well. But one thing I just wanted to make sure that I was able to check in with the planning board on is how this ordinance would work alongside the existing zoning code, and how it would not act as a deterrent to planning board processes. I've been working with both Sue and Bartek to make sure that the ways that the tree ordinance works around potential developments and changes to properties is in line with the planning board's processes already. So the one thing that I could do right now, the proposed tree ordinance, it is on the City of Kingston's website. If anyone's interested or has already reviewed it. Otherwise, I could go through the 6 instances in which the planning board is mentioned in the ordinance and then see if everyone has some questions they would like to ask. Does that work for the board?
Yep.
Sure. Very good. Okay. So the main aspect that the planning board comes up is when it comes to review of properties that are already going through the process of submitting surveys in which trees are marketed on those surveys. An example of that would just be Penn Court, where Penn Court was a situation where a few trees, I want to say a little over 20, were being removed from that site for the development of the new area. They were more than happy to work with replacing the value of those lost trees by planting new trees, which is really in the spirit of what the proposed ordinance is going around, which is for the community to not have a net loss of trees over time. So in this instance for Penn Court, since they had already submitted surveys with all of the basic tree information relative to calculating the value of those trees, we're able to give them a pretty easy breakdown of what replacement would look like. And for those 25-ish, I think they were removing, they were planting 120 replacement trees throughout both Penn Court and the Colonial Gardens, the one right here, right? Yeah. So how that comes up in the ordinance is the language has it that if a survey is being submitted for properties 5,000 square feet or greater, that survey information about trees, and I'll touch on different zonings for Kingston in a moment, but when that information includes trees and the potential for removals and replacement of trees, that information I will be reviewing and then providing my assessments for the planning board in your standard reviews of these things. In the instances that I mentioned that this is brought up in the tree ordinance, basic language such as a tree survey and a tree protection plan will be provided for sites where construction projects are going on to the planning board. And a review of this information will be done by me and provided to the planning board as well prior to the planning board's meeting to review these plans and surveys.
What if the project is slated to remove trees, but doesn't have the space or the ability to accommodate the number of trees that would equate to the loss?
Yeah, that's a very real possibility. So the ordinance also develops the creation of one being a specified city account that is purely for the value of those trees being paid into the account that then can be used as city funds dedicated to tree work in the city of Kingston. And that's if the property owner is interested in paying for the value of the trees versus planting replacement trees. When the replacement trees cannot be planted on the site, as like Sue's talking about, because it's just a case of them not having enough room, right? In which case, the ordinance also designates tree planting areas in the city of Kingston Those areas would be our city parks and designated planting spaces in our public right-of-ways on streets, which is information that was originally developed in the 2018 tree inventory.
So it's acting like a bank. So I do a construction process. I've taken down 4 trees. I can only replace 2 trees. I can basically give you 2 trees to go plant someplace else.
That's correct. Tree bank is the perfect way to put it.
And that tree bank is not just for maintenance, but it's for installation, new trees, and it's, that account is solely dedicated for trees. The city can't use the money for other
Correct.
operating costs or something like that.
That's right, yeah.
You talk about the value of a tree. How's that calculated?
Yeah, so there's a really standardized way of calculating the value of trees that's used in more and more in the construction field, but more historically in landscaping and forestry purposes. It's called the basic reproduction cost, and it is a calculation of the surface area of the tree as measured by the trunk. The beginning of that is, say you have a, let's say 10-inch wide tree. How many nursery trees would it take to replace the surface area of that tree? A nursery tree tends to be about 2-inch trunk diameter versus 10-inch. So you're looking at 5 replacement trees. At the beginning of it, that doesn't count into consideration the species quality of the tree, the location quality of the tree, and the health/condition of the tree as well. All of those would take it from a base value of a specimen perfect tree that you would buy at a nursery and bring it down. So, if it's a tree that's like 90% dead, then 90% of that tree's value does not need to be replaced.
So what table do you use to calculate that? Is there a government table that because Augustine's charges more than Adams does?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a really good book about the tree calculation stuff that's done through the ISA, the International Society of Arboriculture. That's the body that also certifies me to be an arborist, but that is the standard that also the landscape architect for Penn Court referenced as well for their determinations of planting 120 replacement trees. And I could provide this into that book if it's of interest to the planning board as well.
Are there exemptions for invasive species? Like, let's say I'm cutting down like 10 Olympus that are just taking over.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, there's a lot of exemptions that are put into this ordinance as well. Invasive species is definitely the biggest one.
Okay.
It's a pretty thorough list that's targeted specifically around the pressures that Kingston faces when it comes to invasive species. That list has also been informed by our Conservation Advisory Council, as well as the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation. In addition to that, there's also exemptions for, we have large wooded areas that are within the city of Kingston as well that we want to preserve as high quality woodlands. So there's exemptions for forest management and forest stand improvement projects as well. And then finally, there's exemptions for when the trees pose a risk or hazard in the public space. We don't want onerous permit regulations to get in the way of, actions that just meet the needs for public safety in any moment.
Is there in this regulation any type of, I don't want to use the word exemption, but I mean, let's say I own a vacant piece of property, but it's fully forested.
Yes.
Obviously, anything that you build has a certain footprint. So is there a certain percentage that I don't have to pay for? Because obviously I got to tear trees down to build anything on a property to make it usable.
Yes.
So that I don't get billed for every tree that's coming down.
Yeah, so there's a couple of different variables that would work into that. One is that in those projects, the scope is always within the zone of disturbance for it. But then also includes a 15-foot buffer for that as well, just to accommodate any variances for zone of disturbance, lot lines, that sort of thing.
So you're doing you're allowing a certain minimum zone of disturbance without triggering.
No, just to kind of paint the scene for you a little bit. Where that's one aspect for viewing. So if it is a large lot, with multiple acres, where a small portion of it is, the scale at which investigating how many trees are being removed would only be within the zone of disturbance. But then moving on from that, besides the other exemptions that we just mentioned, there is, of course, the need for the potential relief valve. There's a very landmark tree preservation case that happened in the state of Michigan 2 years ago, where a developer bought 40-acre parcel, clear cut it, and then took that municipality to court when they got the bill for the removal of all those trees. Where the total value of all those trees that were removed were more than the value of the property. And there's an argument of this being government taking under the Fifth Amendment. So what this ordinance is planning to offer, the language has not been included yet because we have a meeting that still needs to happen this week with our zoning board of appeals to be the body that would review those situations where a property owner would want to appeal for a situation where the total value of the trees being removed for a project like that is an owner's burden.
That I understand, but is there, like, if you take a vacant piece of property that's so many square feet,
Yes.
is there a certain amount of square feet that you can disturb without triggering you and the tree commission to start valuing the trees? I mean, like, if you have a vacant piece of property, you should, like, is it the 20% of the property can be cleared without triggering this right off the bat? Because if you have a wooded parcel, in order for it to be usable, you gotta take trees down.
That's right.
So how many trees can you take down before you start triggering?
Yeah, so the interesting thing about that, the answer to your question is there is no delineation for percentage of the property or a certain size of land within any specific property to where you kind of just have permission without any process to remove trees. The reason for that is actually very specific, where a lot of ordinances have been ruled to not actually be legal when specific specifications are made for different zone types of properties and different percentages of acceptable removal, because it has been interpreted as potential discrimination against certain types of property owners.
So but I'm just still having a hard time because if I have a vacant piece of property, how do I know how many trees I can take down before you build it?
So you're gonna build for the first tree you take down,
Correct.
is what he's saying.
So anyone that's purchasing a vacant piece of property, if they're buying a piece of vacant land that's now in the city of Kingston that's vacant and clear, that's gonna have a higher value than a property that is full of trees, because me as a buyer coming in is gonna say, the city's gonna bill me for these trees. So now do they call you, you come out and say, well, this is the bill, take the trees down so that they can negotiate the purchase?
I would give the information for the value of the trees, which is a calculated financial value that is part of the property value as well, with the trees that are standing in that situation. And that would be reflecting of when the decision has been made to remove trees. If the decision has been made that the property owner desires to remove the trees, the process would be, let's say I'm the property owner, I want to remove some trees, right? There's also, what I should have mentioned earlier is that there's a, which might actually help you with your idea of a size threshold where trunks 6 inches in diameter, under that size, there's no regulations on those trees on private property. So this is for more substantial size trees.
Correct, but I'm just thinking, I mean, sometimes you have a vacant lot in the city of Kingston, somebody wants to build a house, and maybe you have a housing shortage. So now somebody comes in and wants to build a house, but now there's no threshold of a certain amount of trees that come down for a house footprint and a driveway. So now, in order to value that property, they're gonna have to seek you and say, well, if I want to build a house on this property, what's my bill gonna be? Because I need to know how much that cost is before I go and purchase this property.
Yeah, I mean, in that situation, since the preservation ordinance is not something that's unique to Kingston, it's in multiple communities, both around the Mid-Hudson area and in other counties up and down the Hudson River as well. If someone who is interested in buying a completely wooded property to clear a portion of it for housing wants to take into that consideration the cost or value of those trees that they're wanting to remove, it would not be personally me that evaluates those trees. I'd recommend them hire an arborist to do that evaluation.
You're the one who's gonna build them.
If they go through a permit process to say that they want to remove the trees.
Okay, so
But that doesn't make, so, I don't mean to belabor the point, but if I want to build a house on a piece of property, I know there's a cost to remove the trees, because I can have a tree company come out and I say, look, I'm gonna build a house here, how much to take down these trees? They're gonna give me a price. But now I have another soft cost, which is the city of Kingston, that's gonna charge me for these trees.
Mhm.
I wanna know from the city of Kingston, how much does that cost?
Yeah, so there's,
So can the owner of the property or the potential purchaser come back to the city under this regulation and say, we want to know if this is a 20,000 square foot lot, if we're going to take down 5,000 square feet worth of trees, what's the cost?
yeah, I understand what you're saying. In that situation, it would also be pertinent for the city to stay impartial in the potential purchase of a piece of property. That's why I would recommend a third-party arborist be the one who does the tree value.
But does your regulation then defer to the third party and you'll take their estimate?
If they follow the standard process that the ISA has created for tree value evaluation.
So so I guess my question is your ordinance going to have in it that if somebody hires a tree arborist that follows the ISA valuation process, that the city will accept that for tree removal?
No, it doesn't have that, because all of this evaluation would be triggered at the point of a property owner filing a permit to remove the trees.
But it doesn't sound like you're really willing to commit until after somebody owns a piece of property, and that's a problem. From a development standpoint and from a housing standpoint. So that's a fault that I see based on this discussion, which is, I think, the purpose of this discussion.
So when somebody wants to come in and develop something, their first stop is probably the zoning enforcement officer. Right? That's the first stop. So where in this flow chart, now there's sort of the box for him to check. As far as, he's got to check, is it properly zoned for what you want to build here? Now he's got another box to check that has to deal with tree removal, right? So when that box is checked, where's that flow chart go?
Yeah, so that's actually a really good idea. So if we're at the point where they're processing this stuff with the zoning enforcement officer.
No. Just to be clear, because I represent people when they purchase properties, and what we're seeing in the planning board is these potential purchasers or developers, prior to doing anything, are going down and basically doing a recon mission and going to the with no permits, nothing filed, but they're sitting with the zoning enforcement officer, they're sitting with building safety, and they're saying, what can I do with this property? Who do I need to see? They sit with Sue. What permits, what type of meetings do I have to go through? What commissions? Because this is all factored into developing the property and the cost, because they're trying to figure out, is there a return on the investment? Can I do this? What's the cost? How do I purchase this property?
Yeah.
You're going to have to somehow build in as being part of that process, because they need those hard numbers.
Part of what I think I would actually mention here is that we actually already have private property tree protection in the form-based code as well. That's going to be in designated wetland areas and waterfront areas.
Yeah, that we know.
Yeah, with the size class of 15 inches or taller trees. And in that form-based code, there are not these requirements for property owners to get this information from the city of the value of those trees prior to them purchasing those pieces of property when they may want to be doing a development. So what I would think is that with this preservation ordinance, it would operate much in the way that the form-based code already does in regards to that.
I'm still not seeing how this is working at all.
I mean, they've used Bluestone Court with everything they cleared out of that.
Correct, but Bluestone Court would want to come to the city before they develop their plan and say, what's this?
I mean, it's different if it's $5,000 or is it 50 grand?
It's a very variable price because it really depends on the tree itself.
So then why haven't you in this ordinance come up with a cost that the city can bill, where a developer can come in and come to you and say, we want you to come out and do an evaluation and bill us so we know what this cost is?
I think it would be in the city's best interest, like I mentioned earlier, for that prospective property buyer to have an independent third-party arborist do that.
And I agree with you, but your zoning is not deferred to that third party. So if the third party comes in and says, this is the cost, and you turn around and say, no, that's not the cost, it's 10,000 more. Now who do they appeal to?
Yeah.
Are you right, or is there,
If I was gonna buy a property and it was a wooded lot, I had, a plan to develop it, I hire myself an arborist. He puts a cost down on paper that I could bring that to you and you could verify that without having me file a permit. I'm not ready to, I don't own the property yet. I'm not ready to file a permit, but if I'm doing my due diligence and I hire somebody to do that survey work and prepare that cost estimate, you would be willing, I think that's what they're getting at, you would be willing to say that, yes, that is acceptable, that's accurate, yes.
That's what we have a bill for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what people need to do. I mean, this is a little loosey-goosey and people want to know what's the cost. So this ordinance should have in it, then if somebody hires somebody and they bring it to you, you have the ability to review and approve it. And it's not, well, we think it's okay, but we'll let you know after you buy it.
Yeah.
Because people are not going to go for that. That's going to be an impediment to develop.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. The two things I would probably offer to that in response is that I think a lot of like pre-development site work when it comes to purchasing property is also there's always what is the planned expectations, and within those planned expectations of a purchase of a property for development, there is a scale of what to expect based off of the information that they can gather, right? For geological, for perk, all these sort of things. I think there's probably a parallel to that with trees as well.
Well, you're also looking at on residential property, people don't have the necessary, I mean, they're not, you have developers that obviously have large scale clearing. We also have just local young people trying to buy a house or build a house in the city. They're trying to purchase a piece of property. They can't spend thousands of dollars to see whether or not they can buy a piece of property. They kind of need to have somebody come out, look at it, shoot, and this is the rough number. And that's where I'm looking at the first home time buyer, the person that's getting grants. Are you exempting from this tree requirement any of the non-for-profits or housing or affordable housing? Because are all those groups now going to have to pay for trees?
Yeah, so the legal standing right now also shows that any kind of exemptions for those sort of things does not actually hold up, according to Michigan Court of Appeals, which is kind of the typical
discriminating against another.
Exactly, yeah. So any kind of specific legislation around different
Which I agree
parcel
with.
zoning.
I'm just, different people have different pocketbooks. I just don't, I see this as, so, I mean, to be honest with you, someone's gonna call my office, I wanna build the city of Kingston, I'm gonna look at the lot on Google Maps and say, this is full of trees, you're nailed by the city of the trees. Well, what's that gonna cost? I don't know, you gotta call the city. Well, the city's gonna say, I don't know, you gotta call an arborist, they're gonna say, forget that, I'll go find a piece of property that has a lot of trees on it. So that's just, it's just an impediment. I can already see how this conversation will happen in about 15 minutes.
I would say from my experience right now as, a person in my 30s who's trying to buy a house in Kingston and has, on my 10th offer to a home that no one is going to turn away from the prices that I see homes listed at. And then when our offer is outbid and what the actual closing cost is, that could change.
But that's the thing, when you're looking at vacant land and building, the costs are so high that every little bit hurts.
Yeah.
Purchaser.
And I would also think that anyone who's in the business of purchasing vacant land to build buildings, minus a like owner builder situation, would already be experienced with the preservation ordinances that would be in places like Fishkill, New Paltz.
I agree. I'm not worried about developers. I'm more worried about just the mom and pop single family houses. You go all over the city of Kingston, they're 100 feet wide, 50 feet deep, they're full of trees.
Yeah. So the other thing to think about with those lots is, you were talking about the value of the trees being kind of loosey-goosey. The formula for calculating them is a very simple 6-part formula. And as far as going to calculate values of living things, that is a very simple process. The nice thing, as far as the concern,
not to the first home.
The nice thing that, right, that's a good point for you to make. The nice thing about that situation that you're talking about, where a 50 by 150 lot is filled with tons of trees, is that from my experience of being the urban forester going around the city of Kingston quite frequently, the overwhelming majority of those trees are invasive species. So we're talking about tree of heaven, we're talking about Norway maple, all species that contribute a net negative to the local ecology in the first place. So those exemptions would also prevent those trees from being calculated for value, because there's a net benefit to remove them through the local ecology.
I will back work with them.
Yeah.
What if they had, the people have a sick tree? It's gonna fall or something. We still have to go through all of that, or do we just let it fall on some kid playing in the street?
Well, I would prefer to not let it fall on a kid playing in the street.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're talking about a sick tree on private property?
Yeah.
Yeah. So in that case, if a property owner wants to remove that tree, there would not be, they would just need to check in basically by calling me, similar to how we have property owners who call into our DPW right now to say there's a project that I want to do, relative to my property or like the public right of way abutting my property. And then there's certain checkpoints that we do for other projects like sidewalk projects and that sort of thing. If it checks those boxes, then yes, they do need to fill out a permit. In the case of like a sick tree that is falling over, that's them reporting to the city, hey, we have a sick tree, it's falling over, we'd like to remove it. I go out, I verify it's the case. If it's an emergency situation, I don't hold them up. I tell them to go ahead and remove the tree because public safety is the number one goal here. But they would not be tied up into a permit process in either of those situations.
And we have a lot of trees that were put up on it. I don't know who put them up, the city or whoever it was, along the sidewalks.
Mhm.
Now the sidewalks, you go like this and get down because of the roof. Now that's something should be looked at. Too.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. What we're seeing right now over at where is it over there? Wall Street and Main Street. What's that old church building that turned into an event space? 265 Wall Street. The sidewalks are being redone over there where it was black asphalt kind of paved over different chunks of broken material from before. Those materials being broken from tree roots. When you compact soil, tree roots have nowhere to go. And so they go up to the top level. And the highest they can go without growing over the pavement is directly underneath of it. That's what causes the cracked pavement to happen. So in this situation over at 265 Wall Street, now that they've removed the hardscape materials, they are infilling with a material that's called structural soil, which makes space for tree roots to grow through and then allows for a compacted surface to go over top that you can pave or blue, in that situation, bluestone, because that's a bluestone only area, in which case the tree roots will be able to stay into the structural soil area and not grow on top and recreate that problem you're talking about. It's both something that can be retrofitted and then also something that we're installing under the sidewalks in our new streetscapes, which we've done on Henry Street, and most recently right now, Prospect.
So your findings are not going to be advisory like CAC's, like, but it'll be law, it'll be whatever you determine. It's not something that
It's a law.
Yeah, that's correct.
What's the appeal process?
So the appeal process that will be put into the next round of the proposed ordinance is I can summarize the language for you right now, or I can pull it up.
No, but let's say I think one thing, you think the other, so
Yeah.
how do they challenge you? Do they go to like planning? Do they go to a board? Like what?
Yeah, zoning board of appeals would be the one they would go to for an appeal process. And
It's only if you put in the zoning code.
yeah, so there's a couple of things where the proposed ordinance, which if it were to pass, would trigger some amendments to the form-based code and to what Matt just mentioned as well. Just that way it falls in line with exactly what he was talking about and what we have with the current regulations around private trees in the form-based code. So the form-based code would match what the proposed ordinance does. One thing that I feel compelled to mention is that, the growing trend for tree preservation ordinances that cover private property is happening nationwide. While I would never compare like the Mid-Hudson and Kingston to somewhere like New Jersey, the entire state of New Jersey actually has a requirement for every county and municipality to have a private tree preservation ordinance. To go back to like,
I agree with the private tree ordinance. I absolutely agree with it. I'm watching people in my neighborhood cut down trees. I planted 6 around my property. Right now, I'm probably one of the only properties in the street that still has a tree left. I go down the street, it's all pavement, and you see my house and it's lush as can be. I personally would like to see the city go right down the street and plant trees at the curb, and it is.
that's
what
not
it is.
working.
So I'd love to see that. I just think though that when you have a vacant piece of property that hasn't been utilized and we have a housing shortage, that to start billing people to take down a tree without having some type of cushion is a little.
Yeah, yeah.
It's kind of sticking to people, to be honest.
Well, that makes sense, and I actually really appreciate you bringing it up too. You know, this is a proposed ordinance, right? It hasn't already become law, so there's plenty of potential to further refine these things. The reason why we're interested in doing this and putting a value, which in our world has to be a financial value, on these trees, is because, you know, there's always the potential for a developer to clear cut first and then decide after, right? And when that happens, we lose that forest. And this ordinance is robust, and I'm happy to acknowledge that and talk about better ways to refine it, so that way it's not acting as a burden to people who live in Kingston.
And I will go on record, and I know we've been going back and forth with how this. I will say that this board has probably been the only board in the city of Kingston and the only entity that has been trying to plant trees for the past 10 years before you came on the premises. So we are definitely into landscaping and trees. And I think our history has shown that because we have been pushing when we even have ordinances for trees.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there has to be a balance for development too.
And I completely agree with you. The last thing that I want is for this ordinance to get in the way of the fact that we are in a housing shortage right now. And I actually, not to just, you know, be nice and compliment the board, but because I was so recently hired and I wasn't living in this area prior to it, it was the things that I had seen in Kingston and doing quite heavy research, which Sue got to hear a lot about it during my interview process around how the city was already operating when it comes to trees and planting, not just in public space, but as far as advising private as well. Specifically, the focus that the city has done on planting native species as well. Like, it's really commendable, like, how the planning board and the city itself has been able to make these advancements in municipal actions to improve the lived spaces. Yeah, so I really appreciate everyone's time tonight to go over this. Yeah, and if there's any other questions about how the planning board may be in the current proposed ordinance, you know, Sue has the ability to give everyone my email address as well. And thank you again.
Well, you better hire a staff because you're gonna have. You probably already know that. So you gotta have a buffer.
Even with just the street trees right now, that's already my day to day.
Stand by.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Right. Yeah. I've gotten to work as a consultant for other municipalities that have private tree ordinances. So I'm happy to take on the challenge here too.
And you seem to be very knowledgeable.
The biggest challenge getting DPW to follow the tree rules.
Yeah. And if whoever's gonna be the appeal, I don't want us to be the appeal board, but my parting message is you're gonna appeal to a board that has no people with no tree experience at all. I love trees. I have no, I don't know if I can make an informed decision on that. So yeah, I don't know how you do it.
Yeah, I'm happy to be the resource.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Okay, so we don't have any need to do a committee report, no action taken on that. I want to go back
To item number.
Yeah, let's go back to item number 3, which is the special permit renewal for 560 Albany Avenue.
What was it?
And I did have to back and forth. I emailed him where everything would come. I do have some updates.
Okay.
First, he apologized, but he understood from the original approval that it was administrative renewal. I guess he was anticipating that coming because of that. So I told him.
Just like, right, it's not administrative because he hasn't met requirements, correct?
Right. Normally we would have done the public hearing.
Okay, all right.
So I did relay that to him, that there were some questions about conditions of approval, including the landscaping, the planters, and potential other, I don't know about his garbage enclosure and those types of things. He responded back that he does not want to do the planter boxes at this point He uses his doors from time to time to move steel in and out. Does not have the space to pull big trucks in the front.
Did you LA Board Policy 6 on that at all?
I did. And he also said that he does not have a dumpster, he does not use trash removal, I have metal scrap that is neatly stored behind my shop. But he does not have a dumpster for garbage.
I'm just gonna say I'm a proponent for following the site plan, but I will say that he has fixed that building up. It is impeccably kept inside and out. The lawn's always mowed, and it's one of the best properties along Albany Avenue. Because the other properties are falling down, the weeds are 10 feet tall, and it's always neat as a new pin. So although he hasn't followed it, I will say, other than McDonald's across the street that just put new landscaping in, those two properties are the nicest ones between Foxhall and the town of Ulster.
I don't have a picture, but I can show you. This is just the Google Maps photo. So,
The old show.
yeah, these are just.
You're right.
I mean,
He's got nice
you know,
light, it's all been painted,
right,
the lawns are clean.
Yeah, I think
Did you-
initially there was talk putting planters here.
right, we were gonna put like just barrels or something in front, I mean, you could do that, you could put them underneath the one.
Well, at the time, he wasn't intending on putting.
Right.
So I think that's what he.
But we weren't asking for the world about.
Yeah.
No, I don't think
Do you have a
we
picture
weren't
of
asking
it
for
now?
a full strip.
But I mean, I guess it definitely is nice now, but does that matter? Those were conditions that we set
And
and.
that's where
No, I agree. I would say that we probably should just have them come in and maybe we can modify it or something. I'd be willing to do a planter or the window or
And
something.
it's not something that other folks haven't done in the past, they've modified it.
But I would just encourage everybody to at least or go through McDonald's right now, you're waiting for your meal, see it, because it looks really nice.
So we can have them come to the.
I can ask him to come till July. Yeah.
All right, so we're gonna table.
All right, motion to table
Motion.
item number. So I can't go original
Three.
three,
Is there a second?
second by, yeah, to pick one.
Okay, pick
All in
that.
favor?
I,
Aye, opposed, carried.
You know, that picture was before the sky moved.
Yeah.
We just saw the fire truck in there.
You got 2 minutes.
Right.
Sign those, please.
Chris was going over to see if he could find.
Okay,
Yes.
so now we're gonna go to item number 11. That is a rezoning request. Or recommendation, from the county council. This was a communication with council from the mayor to rezone parcels along at front along Twink Drive. From T5N to T5MS, which is a main street. It is the same zoning classification that covers all of uptown Kingston. Throughout the stockade. I know Kyla.
I printed your notes in black and white, so
Yeah.
you can I get the color, so I'm gonna pull up.
which properties are those that want to be rezoned?
Well, she's gonna, yeah, the black and white, it's hard to see. So do you see the blue highlighted up on the screen are the ones that are included?
Exactly.
So you've got where the Roanoke Savings Bank
That's
was,
Spectrum, right, bro, that's the.
This is the Central Hudson
Central Hudson
That's the bank.
substation,
Bank.
the bank,
And the car dealer.
and yeah, and then the one next to that, which was the insurance, right?
And what's the difference between these two? What's the benefit?
Well, T5MS allows a denser. And probably, increased heights.
Yeah, so the difference.
She's got the two there.
What's the,
It's just the,
So
So
What's
we're talking about
the-
the difference between T5N.
And the T5MS.
Zero. So we want to go to the T5MS.
Correct.
Yeah.
So you,
So we're going to 5, we're going to 90%.
90% frontage,
25,000.
25,000, so that's the big one, the footprint is, I think, the big one. You know, when you're looking at some of those larger lots, you know, the 25,000 footprint is,
Reasonable.
And building height is what for the substation?
I'm sorry.
What's the reason for rezoning? What's the substation? I thought that maybe they'll subdivide out that big.
I don't know, possibly.
640.
Yeah. I don't know.
That's gonna be there.
That's
Yeah,
anytime soon.
Yes.
Yeah,
Well, sometimes if you get one parcel on that side of the street,
yeah.
like let's say
Get all of them.
the old dry cleaner,
Oh, that's.
probably want to do something, they gonna say, hey, this don't
Right,
work,
right,
so tack on. So
So the building height is a big difference there that you see.
So there's potential for 6 stories, 4 max with 2-story bonus height. Right now it's 3.5 max with 2-story bonus.
what are the uses?
I think the uses are probably pretty close, pretty similar.
Yeah.
Are any of those buildings 2 stories high, the 2-story minimum? No.
They're all 2 stories,
Are they all 2
single or
stories?
2.
Yeah,
They're all single.
it's Main Street, T5MS is all
But this is saying
Broadway,
two-story minimum.
you know,
Right,
two-story
and
minimum.
Kingston.
We're switching.
So there are your uses right here. So T5MS is the first one and the T5N is right there. So you can kind of see they're pretty much compatible, identical.
It isn't hard to figure out, you got it.
So you can have adult uses now or you can't have them.
I mean, you got
Already.
somewhat useless, and you got the car dealers that is on enough road, so people can tear them down driveway.
Right.
Multi-housing,
Yeah,
you know, let's go ahead.
I mean, nice, what is that, 3 stories there, nice, it's gonna be up.
I personally don't see any issue with the heights because you have North Front Street that's so high in the back.
Yeah, no, I just thought it was weird that every building on it's only, if it's a 2-story minimum.
Well,
every
you
one
also have the
is-
Kingstonian that got approved, and that's got
Yeah.
high heights, so this will probably bring the rest of it into conformity.
I don't see any
You're in a-
problem.
I think it's all.
It's in
They'll probably do parking, and then they'll do some type of development.
so the ground, yeah, right, the ground floor would probably, you know, be a commercial or, you know, or parking behind it. You know,
Parking
but
under.
frontage, you know, walkable frontage behind is what they're really looking for to, you know, make it.
Is it required that you?
They require, yeah, it requires a street front, it's Main Street, basically, so it's, yeah. Actually, I don't think they are, the flood, pretty tricky, the flood, might be in the Spectrum in the Time War, and the Brown Up Bank project, but not across the street, I don't think it gets across the street there. Gets, there might be at the very edge, but, yeah, never. That's 100, right? 500. So, yeah, so it is.
the plaza that was flooded.
Mm-hmm.
There used to be a street there, Rich.
Yeah, we had to pump it out. The old Sears was the one time when
Before they built the wall behind it, when they first built the plaza, I think it was-
The levee.
Yeah, there was a road that was, that had houses there. That. Had to take all that out, fill it, and, you know.
Ulster Savings Bank had water in the ground floor during that big hurricane that we had to go up, flood. They were under.
All right, everybody, what do you think? Good?
Yeah, you see, it's part of redevelopment, that it's needs that.
All right, do we need a motion on that? or just-
Yeah, you do.
All right, I'll make a motion that we concur with the request to rezone the parcels that are outlined in section 1 of
One second.
from T5N to T5MS. Donald Jacobson with a second.
Any discussion?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried.
We have one more thing, I'm sorry. So, the common council is working on a secret review for Kingston Point Beach for flood mitigation and sea level practices. It's to implement the multi-tier various terraces that they're doing. So they're seeking designation as the agency on the secret review of that project.
Council.
You would be involved in terms of any LWRP review, because you are now the consistency report, that's why you're in here. It's Kingston Point Beach. And it's, there was a design scheme to do improvements there at the beach areas.
No, they didn't have the flood there. I grew up. They didn't have those flood problems. So they'll be a little stop digging. Once they stop digging, that helps. Back up.
Like little eye.
But we're thinking of sure.
We got a nurse. I'll make a motion to concur. Robert Jacobson with a motion to concur that the council should be the lead agency in this particular project. There was a second. Matt Gillis with a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried.
Okay, so signing, this is going around for signature. And I'm just gonna quickly go through everything and make sure they're all signed. Just hang on a second.
That's right.
Great, good. Motion to adjourn.
Vince Archer with a motion to adjourn, second by Chuck Palaco. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? That's carried.
Even 50.
Oh, yeah.